the fence rests, let's lay it down. Gonna dig deep, wave that verdict round. The defense rests, time to analyze. With the evidence, we'll unveil the crime. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests.
All right. Holy crap, it's been a minute. Let me give you that tip. Welcome, peeps. Welcome to Turbulent, Tumultuous, it's exciting Tuesday. And welcome to Teresia on hubby's phone. Hello, Bob. How you doing? And good morning, Miss Elizabeth. How are we? I even had a chance to get back and have a look at what you've sent me. I have been... It's okay. I have licorice and coffee and nicotine. All is well. Okay. We will get through it. Now, we have a long day in court today. There is actually like 9 hours of footage, which, take an hour for lunch. But we've got, I think, some very interesting witnesses on today. The first one up is Chloe's mum. She's on the stand. And then we get to speak to Sandra Torres. Now, she was the Good Samaritan that stopped the car, and when Chloe ran out into the traffic that day, and then the one that dipshit Jason said was some drunken drug addict who inserted herself into their business. So we get to speak to her. Then we have Roberta Ballard, a psychologist, and then we get to speak to wifey number one. Wifey number one. Gabriella Kuykendall. This is Benyamin Ben Michaels, number uno. Thank you, sweetheart. We love you too, darling. I have been very, very busy. All right, so top of the news circle today. We are actually going to cover this trial on the podcast on Saturday. So we're going to analyse the testimonies and the insanity plea and all of the proceedings, so to speak. And we are also, I can finally confirm, we are doing our Thai update tomorrow night, 10 p.m. your time. So massive update. Big things happening. Yes, lots and lots going on. So tune in tomorrow night. Steve and I'll be doing the live at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I might not stream Friday night. I'll see how I go. No. You can't miss that one. You can't miss a Thai update. No way. Nope. Steve's even tagged all the big guns, Vinnie Politan and Court TV, and it's big. Okay, bigger than Ben-Hur. So, okay, sweet. Thank you very much. You've earned your rent, wench. Yeah. Well, I put mine up because I'm still waiting for Steve. He's hopeless at getting back to me. Yes, I'm waiting for his link for me to promote it. So I will take mine down once I get his link, and we'll be dual streaming it. So, but I needed to get it out there because we've only got one day, and it's going to be big. All right. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And I think Bob's gone. Where's Bob? Bob, come back. Right on, doggy. Lord, I've got so much work to do between now and then. Change funny. No rest for the wicked. Let's do it. Oh dear. She doesn't look very happy, poor bugger. She probably hasn't seen her mum for how long? Oh, this might be a tearjerker.
Renee Driver,
Okay, and where do you currently live? City and state is fine.
Florida.
Okay, and what do you do for a living?
I'm
Of
a
course you
server.
can.
Okay, all right, and how do you know
Absolutely.
Chloe?
She's my daughter.
Okay, how many children do you have?
3
Okay, is she the oldest, youngest? Where does she fall in line?
youngest.
Okay. I know that it's very hard for you to be here today, and if you need a break or a moment, just let me know, okay? All right. Tell us about Chloe as a child.
She's a beautiful little girl. She was a spitfire.
Okay, and what do you mean by spitfire?
She was very she knew everything. She was smarter than everybody and in her family.
And that was primarily when she was a teenager?
Yes. She did gymnastics when she was a little girl, and she had friends, and she played baseball in junior high school, I believe, or softball. But as she got older, she just,
Might do this at
she
1.25, I think.
she just
We've
knew
got a lot
everything.
to get through to do
Okay.
it. A lot.
Were you close with your daughter while she was growing up?
I thought I was.
Okay. Have you learned a lot of information since this case started that you had to
Yes.
reevaluate that position?
Yes.
Okay. When she was a teenager, I know
If it's too fast for you, please let me know.
you said she was headstrong.
Very.
Your family moved around a lot, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that kind of created a little bit of a level of upheaval with Chloe in terms of relationships with people and friends.
I didn't think it was.
Okay. When she was a teenager, did you notice any signs or concerns about her mood or possible mental illness when she was a child?
There were a lot of different things. She was very headstrong, and I just thought she was going to be a strong little girl. And then as she got older, she put me through some stuff.
Okay.
There were times where she put me through hell.
Okay. And a lot of that was kind of based on teenagers who know better than their
Yes.
parents.
Yes.
Wasn't her out committing crimes or anything like
Oh,
that.
no.
Definitely thought she was all-knowing or anything like that. Were you aware when she was a child of whether or not she had attempted to commit suicide?
When she was a child?
Well, as a teenager.
No.
Okay. Did you subsequently learn about some behavioral issues related to that after this case started, with cutting or anything like that?
She was cutting her wrist, but I never knew it because she always wore those plastic bracelets and it covered it. And I never had any idea that she was going through that.
Okay. She never communicated any of that to you
Never.
at all. Okay. When she ultimately left your house, that was when she was 17 years old?
I believe so,
Okay. And tell me what your thought process was about why you let her go.
because I couldn't handle the way she was going about it. My middle and my younger siblings, I think, learned from their older one. My oldest son badgered me, and he would do it all day, every day until he got what he wanted. And my husband always worked out of state. I was Monday through Friday, only parent, working and having 3 children. And when there's just a time where I gave in to him. Well, then it started becoming a habit. And I think Chloe got some of those habits maybe from him, watching him get what he wanted as she was growing up. She was never a materialistic kid, but when she wanted to leave and she just asked and asked, and it wasn't just asking, it was arguing, it was fighting, it was, I just finally I gave in. On top of that, my husband ended up with a quadruple bypass. He was out of work for a couple of years. So, I mean, I had my own issues to deal with. On top of that, I had children to deal with that were very headstrong.
Okay. And when she left your house, how would you describe the level of communication you had with Chloe? Was it here and there? Was it constant?
It was here and there when she left.
When she left? Okay. And was that usually via text or phone, or do you recall?
Probably both.
Okay. When did you first find out that she was involved with Mr. Benyamin?
18, maybe.
2018, or when she
No,
was?
well, yeah, that would be 2018 also, yes.
Okay. And how did you find out about that?
She came home and I found out she was pregnant, I believe.
Okay. And was that the first time you found out about the age difference between the two of them?
Yes, I had no idea. I didn't know about him. I didn't know about his age. I knew nothing.
You knew nothing. She hadn't told you about any of that.
Not
Okay.
anything.
And what was your reaction to finding out his age?
I said I never wanted to meet him. I never wanted him around the house. She was welcome to stay and with her baby, but I wanted nothing to do with him.
Okay. And then ultimately, she had the baby, but continued to stay with him, correct?
Yes.
At any point in time, did you have any concerns about their relationship prior to the birth of Hannah?
Well, it was all just a big shock. I did what I could to try to get her to stay with me, but it didn't work.
Okay. And so then ultimately Hannah was born. When was the first time you got to meet Hannah?
January of 2019.
Okay. And in what kind of situation was that? They bring her to you?
Yes.
Or? Okay. And when you observed Chloe with Hannah, what did you observe about her care and demeanor with her
She
daughter?
was a very good mother and she loved her daughter.
Okay. Never saw any concerns of,
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at that time.
as far as from what you could see, did you feel that she was the primary caregiver of that child?
Yes.
Okay. And then after the birth of Hannah, how would you describe the level of contact you had with Chloe at that time? Was it?
It was minimal.
Okay. Did you initiate contact with her?
A lot.
Okay. And what was the response to that contact?
Honestly, I don't remember. It wasn't as much as I would have liked.
Okay. And then Hannah was born in October of 2019. And then you met her in January.
Oh, so I met her in 2020. I'm sorry, January of 2020.
January 2020.
Yes.
Okay. So the first time you met her was January 2020. And that was at your house?
Yes.
Okay. And then when do you recall the next time you saw her?
April of
In
2020.
2020. And each one of these times that Chloe would bring her to you, you didn't observe anything concerning about the care of Hannah?
No,
Did you ever observe any signs of mental illness or anything at that point with your daughter?
no, other than me just not being able to understand how she would have gotten involved with somebody that was so much older than her.
Okay. You struggled with that?
Yes.
Okay. When was the first time you really found out anything about the true nature of their relationship?
I don't believe I met him in January of 2020, or I don't believe he was there. Probably July of 2020.
Okay. And can you share what those concerns were?
So I got to see how much weight Chloe had lost. I could see her in July. She was at my house for a couple of weeks. Just everything, a lot had just changed. She was mumbling. She was, nothing really changed with Hannah, just her. She was just falling apart. I mean, she literally was just falling apart. But at the same time, at that time, I wasn't so much paying attention to her because I had Hannah too, and I was just so excited every time I got to see Hannah.
Was that the time that involved going to the river with them?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
And then when was the next time that you saw Hannah? Do you recall?
After the incident in November.
Okay. All right. So let's jump forward to Thanksgiving of 2020. Okay. Well, before I do that, may I approach the witness? Yes.
Thanksgiving is coming up. Is that right? What, can you pop the date in chat for me so that I can send you my well wishes from Oz?
All right. I'm going to show you what's marked as Defense 18. Can you recognize that picture?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us about what age Chloe was at that particular? Well, I'll move to admit Defense 18. No objection.
It's admitted.
Judge, would you please turn off overhead so I can publish? Thank you.
Okay. Are you doing the document camera or are you doing?
Okay, it should be on the computer if you just give me 1 second. No. I'll skip that one for right now.
Oh, sorry that it's, I'm not letting you do what needs to be done.
Thank you. All right, so let's jump forward to Thanksgiving of 2020, okay? And where were you at that time? Where were you living?
Knoxville.
Okay, and you lived with your husband in Knoxville at that time?
I did.
Okay, and tell us what happened on November 26th of 2020.
Was that Thanksgiving Day?
Yes, ma'am.
I received some alarming texts from Chloe, which I woke my husband up and I said that we need to go to Asheville.
Okay, and based on those texts, what did you and your husband immediately do?
Got dressed and went to Asheville.
Okay, and about how far away is that for you guys?
Maybe 2 hours. I don't remember.
Okay, what do you remember about what time of day you arrived there?
I believe we left around 11, so I'm going to say around 1:30.
Okay, but you were concerned enough by the information you had received from Chloe at that time that you immediately dropped
Yes.
what you were doing and got in the car?
Yes.
Okay, and what happened when you arrived in Asheville?
Chloe was there. She was distraught. She was crying. She was very upset because Brian had taken off with Hannah.
Okay, so when you got there, Hannah was not there.
Hannah was not there.
Did you know where Hannah was at that point in time?
No idea.
Okay, and what did you do next?
I believe we called the police.
Okay, and then after calling the
Thank you.
police, what did you all decide to do?
28th of November.
After everything was all settled and done with, we ended up leaving Asheville without Hannah, and when we brought Chloe
Back to your house in
back,
Knoxville?
yes.
Okay, and when you got back to Knoxville, is that the first time you kind of became aware of everything that had been going on?
Yes,
Okay, is the first time you learned that?
it started trickling in.
Okay, first time you learned anything about Hannah not having a birth certificate or pediatric care?
That is correct.
Okay, and what steps did you take from there?
On Friday after Thanksgiving, I went straight to Knoxville Police Department to see if there was anything we could do. There was absolutely nothing we could do. Since it didn't happen in Tennessee, where I lived. Then I started looking on the internet and making phone calls about getting Hannah a birth certificate. I talked to Brian's mother. She gave me a phone number. On Saturday, I called the phone number that she gave me that was for the FBI. I called Memorial Hospital that was in Miami, Florida. And I just wanted to get some kind of ball rolling on getting her a birth certificate. And I will tell you, I did have to lie about that to Chloe because she was adamant of she did not want Hannah to have a birth certificate because Brian was ordering her not to, and to make sure that I didn't get involved in getting a birth certificate.
Okay, so you were,
But we were doing it behind her back.
okay, but you were trying to, at the same time, you were also trying to kind of fix those things that the Asheville Police Department and Knoxville Police Department had all
Yes.
told you.
I was assuming that there could have been an Amber Alert out for her. That's all I wanted was Hannah back. But evidently I was wrong, and they weren't able to do anything like that.
Okay, and at that point, it's because there had been no birth certificate or determination of parentage?
Yes, and also because Hannah was Brian's daughter, all they had to do was a blood test, which means they didn't find her in danger, so they couldn't move on.
All right, so at that particular point in time, you learned more about the relationship in those 48, 72 hours than you had the entire 2.5
Absolutely.
years beforehand.
Absolutely.
When you picked up your daughter in Asheville, do you recall seeing any physical marks on her that you were concerned about?
At that time, I believe she had a black eye, and I also believe the police took pictures of her back because she had been dragged or thrown on the ground, and there were marks on her back.
So when you went to pick her up that day, you recall her having that black eye.
Yes.
Okay. Without telling us what she said, did you ask her about that black eye? Do you recall?
Yes.
And then, so in response to all of these things that you were learning in this short period of time, were you trying to help Chloe and Hannah formulate a plan?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that was reflected in the steps you took to try to get the birth certificate or other things?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Did you get any indication at that point in time? Well, I'll move on. So during that period of time, Chloe, did you have any contact with Mr. Benyamin when Hannah was gone?
Yes.
Okay. And did he say some pretty concerning things to you at that time without saying what he said? Were there things that were said that concerned you?
On Thanksgiving evening, yes.
Okay. And that just, again, contributed to you trying to figure out what to do next, correct?
Yes, I exploded.
All right. And you had never really ever had to deal with anything like this beforehand, correct?
No.
Okay. Was Hannah your only grandchild?
Yes.
Okay. And then ultimately, Chloe had been communicating with Mr. Benyamin, correct? To try to get back to Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. And was she, during that time that she was separated, what was her demeanor?
Just lost, confused.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, she wasn't,
She was hopeless.
she was hopeless?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do you recall, Chloe, well, let me rephrase that. You took a video of Chloe on November 27th. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. What?
I think I
Is
need
that
to
the 7th?
shut this down and restart
Okay.
and try to get that to work. So it's gonna,
Sure.
it says live to displays.
I'm just gonna rewatch this video, okay?
My name is Nicole Driver. It's 11/27/2020. I'm being forced to get into a truck with Benyamin and Kyle or Brian Joyce to see my daughter again because he has kept her away from me. I do not know where she is, and he won't tell me anything. He's kept her with people that I don't really know well, and I don't know what's going on with her. And I'm being forced to get in the car and go with him to be able to see her. And I don't even know if I'm actually going straight to her, but I'm doing whatever I think I can to get to her. Her name is again Nicole Driver.
All right, and you're the one that took that video, correct? All right, tell us why you took that video.
Because I was going to send it to the police officer in North Carolina
Were you
to see if he could help. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to go about getting help, even though I lived where I lived. And she was taken from Asheville, so I was going to take that video and send it to the officer in Asheville to help us because he was a very nice person. And he said he would help us in any way he could. So,
Were you concerned about the safety of your daughter and your granddaughter at that time?
absolutely.
Ultimately, Chloe left your residence after being there a couple days, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall when your next communication was from her?
I don't know, all these time periods are getting messed up in my head. There was a time where she came back for a day or two, and then I guess, was somewhere in Knoxville, I don't know where. And I believe they picked her up to go back to Asheville to look at some property.
Okay. What was her demeanor or when she was with you over Thanksgiving and the time thereafter? Can you describe like her affect or what you noticed about her?
She was a mess because Hannah wasn't there, but she was relieved because she was at home. At least that's what I thought. That's what I saw.
Did she appear tired or distressed or?
So she always appeared tired. She always appeared hungry.
Okay. And then you also, I think, indicated that she was acting kind of strangely in terms of mumbling or like.
And I started noticing that in July
Mhm.
when she was at my house for a couple of weeks.
Okay. Did you see it again in November? Do you recall?
I honestly don't recall. I don't know.
All right. If you would have told an evaluator in this case that that's something that you talked to, you have no reason to dispute that though, correct?
Absolutely not.
And I think you already indicated that you're having a lot of issues with the memories.
Absolutely.
Okay. When this has been a pretty traumatic and stressful event for you
Yes.
and your family, correct? Okay. So she came back to you with Hannah at some point in time, correct? After?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to show you what is marked. Fence 19 and 20. May I push witness?
Yes.
You just take a look at these two pictures for me. All right. Do I need to admit those? Okay, you're admitted. May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so this is a picture that was, I'm trying, not my computer. There we go. All right. These were pictures, and that's your residence there, correct? In the
Yes.
background? All right.
Yes.
And that this was in after Thanksgiving of 2020, correct? Do you recall?
Yes. It was the beginning of December, I believe.
Okay. And do you know who took these pictures?
I did.
You took those pictures? Okay. And that this is an accurate representation of what Chloe looked like
Yes.
at the end of November 2020? Okay. Looking back on these pictures, do they cause you some level of distress?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I didn't see it at the time. All I saw was Hannah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And you also took this picture as well, correct?
Yes.
All right. What were you trying to do? What were you and your husband trying to do during this time after Chloe left with Hannah and went back with Mr. Benyamin?
We were just trying to get her and Hannah to stay with us.
And how were you doing that? Do you recall?
Just, my husband actually told her that somewhere down the line that if she came home, he would pay for her to go to school and buy her a car. And she did not like that. She said that it would have to be her choice if she decided to come home and do all.
Did you feel at that point in time that she felt like she could leave that relationship?
No.
Or that she left that relationship, she had concerns about whether or not she'd be able to leave with Hannah?
She wouldn't be able to leave with Hannah.
Okay. All right.
That's what I did.
Okay, all right. And what other things did you and your husband do between Thanksgiving and December 8th of 2020 to try to convince Chloe to leave?
So she left right around those pictures.
Yay!
And I didn't see her again until December 7th, I don't believe.
Okay.
December 7th, she came to my house to pick up Hannah's stuff because they were heading to Florida. And I asked her to please stay with us. And she was worried. She was like, she said that Brian would never let her just would never allow her to stay with Hannah. And I tried to tell her, don't worry about Brian and Jason or whoever's here. We can take care of this. I will call the police and I will have them removed from our property. And she said, no, Mom, you don't understand it. He'll never let us stay.
The way she acted when she was at your house, was that different than you had ever previously seen her since you?
Yes.
I mean, you previously described her as a spitfire and talkative. and
No,
everything.
at this point, she was, I hate to say it, but she was just drained and dead inside. She was like a zombie. She was just, she wasn't her. She wasn't Chloe.
Okay. Both physically and mentally or emotionally?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
all of it.
Did you notice when she came back to your home on the 7th, whether or not she still had, or whether she had more bruises or anything on her face? Do you recall?
I do. Actually, December 7th, I asked her how she got the black eye, and she said she ran into a cabinet. I said, no, you didn't.
But she didn't
And
get
she
any-
said, Mom, I deserved it. And it's,
So let's talk about looking back at all of this now, okay? You obviously lost your daughter and granddaughter, correct?
yes,
All right, and you found out on December the 8th about what had happened, correct?
technically, I didn't find out till December 9th in the morning.
Okay. And that was from the Canton Police Department?
Yes,
Okay. And you and your husband immediately started providing information to law enforcement at that time, correct?
I believe so.
But
That
you
was a
had,
hard phone call, so I really don't remember. what it was.
understandable. Did at any point in time, did you ever, based on what you saw with Chloe, ever think that she would harm Hannah?
Absolutely not.
Did you have any concerns that she would ever harm herself?
I didn't think about it at the time. But now that I look back at so much and remember things, possibly, yes.
So this, when you got that phone call from Canton Police, you were floored, correct?
Yes, I thought I lost my daughter and my granddaughter. Well, I did lose my granddaughter.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor? If I have any further questions at this time, Ms. Roberts can ask you some questions, okay? Good morning. Ms. Driver, I want to go through, you indicated that we saw those pictures that after the incident where she came to your house and you made that video, her and Hannah both returned to your house and stayed with you for a couple of days, correct?
After the video, she was gone for probably a week or so.
Do you recall talking to Detective Cruz during this investigation with your husband?
December 11th, we went to Canton Police.
Okay. And do you recall telling her that Brian dropped off Hannah and Chloe at your house the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend? And they
No.
stayed for a couple of days?
I don't know. All the dates are mixed up in my head.
Okay.
I don't know when they came back.
Okay. But did her and Hannah come stay with you?
Yes, after the video?
After the video?
Yes.
Okay.
I just don't know if it was when exactly it was.
Okay. And then you said that she was leaving with him because they were going to go look at some property in Knoxville?
Yes.
All right.
In Asheville.
In Asheville. Okay. Thank you. And when you were interviewed by Detective Cruz, did you tell her that you and your husband didn't know that anything was going on until about Thanksgiving time?
That is, yes.
Is that accurate?
For the most part, yes.
And did you tell her that at that time your concerns became your goal of getting Hannah away from both of them because you didn't want Hannah to be raised in a cult?
That is correct too.
Okay. So your decision to try to get her a birth certificate and go behind Chloe's back in that regard is because you wanted Chloe to go to school, to get vaccines, to have medical care, and Chloe and Brian would not agree with that.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And you had repeatedly tried to get Chloe to leave that situation and she refused, correct?
She didn't refuse. She wanted to, but there was no way out
Okay. And
in her mind.
all right. You're aware that after she killed Hannah, she continued to reach out to
Yes.
Brian and maintain a relationship with him, right?
I know that she kept in touch with him. He had a hold on her to where she had to.
Okay.
I don't understand it myself. I
Okay.
really don't.
All right. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of your statement that she had to. Do you understand that when she was reaching out to him, he could not access her physically and he could not call her
At the hospital?
after
Or
she was
in jail?
arrested?
Yeah, I know that she could only make the calls out.
Okay. And are you aware of how often she chose to do that?
I know that, honestly, no, I don't.
Okay. Did you know that for over 2 years after she killed Hannah, she continued to call him?
Yes,
Okay. Are you aware that she made over 617 phone calls to him?
600, no, I was not.
Do you know just how many times she lied to you and told you she was no longer talking to him when she in fact was?
And I made it clear to her, if she kept talking to him, that I would have nothing to do with her.
Okay. And are you aware after you made those statements to her, she continued to speak to him behind your
I
back?
believe so. I believe she told me.
Okay. Do you recall a conversation that you had with her after her arrest where she told you that she wished we would have asked her permission to give Hannah an autopsy because her and Brian would have never agreed to that?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. You don't remember having an argument with her about that's what happens when you kill a baby, that they have to have an autopsy?
With Chloe?
Right. Do you remember having that conversation with her?
No.
You don't remember that? Okay. Do you recall telling Detective Cruz when you spoke to her that Chloe went into this situation with strength from her upbringing and she was able to wane through it, but the last few months when he teamed up with Jason, that's when she lost hope?
I really don't. I'm sorry.
Okay. You've told this jury that you didn't become aware that there were any issues until the last couple of months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're aware that's when Jason Spillers joined the picture?
I have not been keeping up with Jason. I don't know.
Okay.
I know that he was at the river, but he was only at the river for a few minutes.
Okay. So you don't.
After that, I know nothing about this cult. I know nothing about these people. I only know about Chloe and Brian and maybe a little bit about the two girls. That's it. I didn't go into their life.
Okay.
Like, I don't know.
All right.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So you don't recall saying that she went into the situation with strength and that the situation in the last couple of months had gotten bad since Jason joined the group. You don't remember?
Absolutely not. That doesn't even sound like my words.
Okay.
I don't know.
I want to talk to you about Chloe's access to money. Did at some point she transfer you $65,000?
60.
$60,000?
Mhm.
When did that happen?
I asked her to put that money, to take it out of her account so Brian could no longer have any way of holding onto it or getting a hold of it. And I asked her to put it in another account because I wanted her and Hannah to start figuring something out as far as getting away.
Okay. Do you recall when that was?
Hannah and Chloe it had to have been in November.
Okay. So you said you wanted her to take it out of her account.
It was after she got Hannah back from when Brian took him.
Okay. Was that when Hannah and her came to stay with you for a few days?
Yes.
And so at that time she had access to her own bank account that had over $60,000 in it?
Yes, because she went to the bank and showed her ID, wrote a check, and she transferred it over to our account.
Okay, so Chloe transferred $60,000 to your account.
Mhm.
All right. And did she, to your knowledge at that time, have any, withdraw any cash?
I believe she had when she left North Carolina, she had $1,000 on her,
When she
if I
left?
remember correctly.
Okay. And so she transferred you the money. She
Oh,
had-
no, I do remember. I'm sorry. We went to the ATM when we left North Carolina and she pulled out that money. So she would have cash on her while she was at my house or just for an emergency or anything she needed to use it for.
Okay, so she had debit cards, checks, and access to that account with all the money in it.
Well, she had a debit card, yes.
Okay, all right. So she transferred you $60,000 and she withdrew $1,000 cash for herself?
If I remember correctly, yes.
Okay, and then after that, she chose to go with Brian to look at some property in Knoxville?
Yeah, it was, so after she transferred me the money, a few days later, he showed up, picked Hannah up, and she wanted Eric and I to go with them, and we just couldn't do it.
Okay. And
But I look back at that now as a cry for help as far as asking her father and I to go, because she asked us a couple of different times to make sure, that she wanted us to go with them.
okay. And your statement before was that she went back with Brian because she had to go, she was trying to get back to Hannah, correct? Was that your testimony before?
At the Thanksgiving time when she made that video, yes.
Okay. And
I heard some of the conversations that on her end when she was talking with him.
okay. And even after Hannah was dead, her continued pursuit of Mr. Benyamin and her relationship, you'd agree that at that point he couldn't hold the baby over her, right?
Absolutely.
Because Hannah was deceased.
Absolutely.
Okay. And after she transferred you that $60,000 and she was arrested for killing Hannah, isn't it true that she reached out to you and accused you of stealing her money and wanted you to give the money back to Brian?
Yes,
And she told you repeatedly, that's my money.
yes. I didn't want the money. It was for her.
Okay. And you told her, Chloe, if you
Yeah.
continue to make these choices, you're going to lose your entire family.
Yes,
And at that time, she chastised you for speaking ill of Brian, correct?
most likely, yes.
Okay. And she still wanted to be with him and still loved him even after she killed Hannah.
Yes.
Um,
It was that hold he had on her.
okay. You indicated that you spoke to Detective Cruz in this case. How much do you know about the actual evidence and investigation in this case?
I prefer not to know.
Okay.
I
You've
really don't want to know.
all right. You've intentionally not reviewed any of the evidence? Is that
No, I have no, my husband and I do not want to know.
okay?
I
And
don't
you,
want to see pictures. I don't want to know.
okay. And is it fair to say that you have not reviewed any of Chloe's statements to law enforcement
No.
or the doctors? Okay. So is it fair to say that this jury probably knows more about facts
Absolutely.
and evidence than you?
Absolutely.
And you obviously love Chloe. She's your only daughter, right?
Yes.
And you understand that this jury was selected because they are neutral and unbiased, right?
Mhm.
And you'd agree that they are less biased and more neutral than you.
I mean, I would assume so. I would hope so.
All right. I have no further questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Any redirect?
Yes. Ms. Driver, are you here today just for Chloe? Are you here for your granddaughter as well?
I'm here for both.
Looking back on this whole scenario, well, let me rephrase that. Every day, you think about this case, correct?
Every day I think about both of them.
And you continue to live with a lot of regret, correct?
Absolutely.
And then looking back on everything, do you wish you could have done more?
Absolutely.
Have you had the opportunity to replay all this stuff in your head and try to figure out different ways that you could have done more?
Yes.
Do you feel like you could have done more?
Yes.
Think you should have done more?
Absolutely.
So you're not absolving anybody here of personal responsibility, correct? You're here to give your perspective on what you saw your daughter endure, correct?
Yes.
All right, and that's, you understand the position that we are all in, correct? And that you never, ever thought your daughter would harm herself or her daughter, correct?
No.
And everything that you saw was Chloe being a loving and caring mother,
She did love Hannah.
okay? And it was clear to you, as you saw her from November 26th up until December 20th, that you saw physical changes in
Yes.
her appearance. I'm sorry, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And you also saw,
I'm going to object to the leading nature of these questions. This is for witness.
you also saw, sure, Your Honor. You also saw signs of visible emotional and mental distress, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, and those are reflected in those pictures that I showed you, correct? All right. And are you here today to persuade the jury one way or another?
No, I mean, I'm ready to accept whatever comes of this.
And you understand that, you're not here to try to help Chloe in any particular way, correct? You're just here to give your version of what
Yes.
happened and you observed.
Yes.
All right, and it's clearly affected you tremendously, correct?
Absolutely.
Your entire family, is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
All right, I have no further questions, thank you.
Any further cross-examination? All right, you can step down. Thank you, ma'am. All right, call your next witness, please.
We're gonna call Sandra Torres.
This is the lady that stopped when Chloe ran out into traffic and inserted herself into their business. The alleged drunken, drug addicted woman that ended up with a black eye.
Before you sit down, I'm going to have you raise your right hand, okay? Do you swear the information and testimony you're about to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, you can have a seat. Can you tell the court who you are and spell your last name for the record, please?
Sandra Torres, Torres.
Okay, and where do you currently live, city and state?
Anderson, South Carolina.
Okay, all right. And you understand what you're here for today, correct?
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna talk about an incident that occurred on November 25th of 2020, correct? All right, so you have to say yes or no because she's
okay,
recording.
yes, sorry.
That's okay. You don't know Chloe Driver prior to that date, correct? All right, so let's talk about what happened in November of 2020. You, at that point in time, were living where?
In Fairview,
Okay, and where's
North
that?
Carolina.
Okay, where's that in relation to Asheville? What'd you guess?
Like 10 minutes from each other.
Okay, all right, so tell us what you saw on November 25th of 2020.
Well, I was driving down the road to go get some lunch, and I seen these two guys chasing a young girl. So they were right in the middle of the, like on the side of the road. I made a U-turn, came back. I wanted to see if she was okay because, I mean, she was running from them. And then they had got a hold of her and was dragging her back to the apartments that were right there.
Okay, was this a pretty busy intersection or area?
It's a 2-lane, so it's very small.
Okay.
It's busy usually at first thing in the morning, afternoon, school time, and then in the evenings.
But you were just driving down the road on your way to get lunch that day.
I was just cutting down that little road to go over to the Biltmore area to get lunch.
Okay. Is the young lady you saw running that day present, sitting over there?
I believe so. I mean, it all happened so fast.
Okay. And you said she was being chased by 2 men.
Yes.
Okay. And you remember what those men looked like,
Oh,
correct?
yes.
All right. Can you describe what they look like?
Well, one of them, in my opinion, looks like Marilyn Manson.
Okay.
And the other one was just a tall, blonde-headed guy. I mean,
Which one was chasing Miss Driver?
both.
Both of them.
Yes.
Do you recall which one actually physically grabbed her?
Well, they both were like on the side of her, like bringing her back because I had pulled over into the apartments there, and she had both of them on the side.
Based on what you had seen driving down the road, that created some level of concern for you, correct?
Oh, yes, because I made a U-turn.
Okay, and then you came back and saw them struggling over her?
Yes,
Okay, and there was still traffic in the area, correct?
yes.
All right, do you recall Miss Driver's appearance that day? Like did you notice any emotions or anything that she was exhibiting?
She was very upset. She was yelling at me to help her child, that these people were kidnapping her. And, you know, that's why I stood and waited. And then I called the law, 911.
Okay, so you called 911?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you, I think you talked about where you moved your vehicle?
Yes, so where I was parked at, I had actually backed up because they were bringing her back towards the apartment. So I just parked in front of this row of cars,
Okay.
not knowing whose they were. I'm just trying to, but I was still in my vehicle at that time. So.
And you saw them struggling over her, correct?
Yeah, both of them. Yes,
All right.
struggling over her. And then she approached my vehicle, and then, what's his name? Benjamin, the dark-headed gentleman, is the one that grabbed her again,
Okay,
right in front of she was standing at my doorway.
okay. And you recall her yelling certain things to you?
Yeah, help me. They're trying to kidnap. They got my daughter.
Okay,
Don't leave me. Call my mom.
Okay.
Call my parents. And she tried to give me the phone number.
okay. And you recall that specifically?
Yes.
Okay. And what were Mr. Ben Michael and Mr. Spillers doing in response to that? Do you recall?
Just they grabbed her and got her, trying to get her back in the house, and then she came back out of the house.
Okay, so she got back out of the house?
Yes.
Okay, and then what did she do next?
I'm running back towards my vehicle. I had, like I said, called 911 already, and I was just waiting for the police to show up.
Okay, and what did you do with your vehicle?
It was still parked
Okay.
in front of the apartment there, which, I mean, I didn't know that was the apartment she was going to go to, but I was just parked in front of someone's apartment and had vehicles blocked in.
So you saw her being physically taken back into that apartment?
Yes,
Okay,
I actually take it in there. And then Benjamin's the one that yelled and said, she's having a panic attack.
Did you believe that at that
No,
time?
because I know people that have had panic attacks. She was yelling for help and to help her child.
All right, so you had already called 911?
Yes.
And you were still waiting for them to come?
Yes.
All right, and then what happened after she came out of that
So
apartment?
when she came out of the apartment, he come after her, Benjamin, all right, whatever his name is. So he came after her, grabbed her, and at that point was trying to put her into the vehicle, his vehicle, which I had blocked in, which I didn't know that. And she was fighting him off, yelling, screaming, fighting. And then here come another lady out of the house who had a baby.
Okay. And where did that lady go with the baby?
She was trying to get in the vehicle as they were trying to put her in the vehicle, and she was trying to grab her baby. So then now they're tug of warring with the baby. So I got out of my vehicle at that point.
Okay. And what did you do?
I went over, stuck my hand in the window and tried to grab the keys out of the ignition.
Did it seem like it was taking forever for law enforcement to show
Oh,
up?
definitely,
Okay.
because it's like, okay, where are they? What's going on?
Did you get the impression that Ms. Driver in any way, shape, or form wanted to get into that vehicle with him?
No.
Okay. Was she still yelling at that time?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall what she was saying?
just help me, help my baby. Don't let them take me. Call my parents.
All right. And so you tried to keep them from, well, your car had already blocked them in to a degree, correct?
Yes,
All right. And were you able to get those keys?
no.
Okay. And so what did Mr. Benmichael do?
They got her in the vehicle. The other lady got in the vehicle. And then he was in the driver's seat trying to maneuver the vehicle to get away.
Okay. And what happened to you as a result of him trying to do that?
So when he was trying to back up a little, go, he ended up hitting me with his vehicle on my knee.
Okay. And you were injured because of that? Or had
Well,
a
I had a bruise and
Okay.
a cut. And then at that point, he had maneuvered the vehicle enough. He hit the car next to him, which was Peggy's car,
He hit Peggy's car.
hit Peggy's car,
Okay.
went over an embankment that had plants and flowers and things, went over that and then was gone.
Okay. And were you concerned for Ms. Driver and the baby at that point?
Yeah, I believe I called 911 again, saying that they had took off with her and the baby. And then Peggy was still there and Jason was still there.
At any point in time, did you ever punch Peggy?
No, she came around the vehicle and told me, you don't know what you've done. You don't know what kind of trouble you've caused. And I was like, well, I didn't know what to say, but she was up in my face, like right here. I did push her back.
But you never punched her
Oh,
or
no.
anything? Okay.
No.
Did you ever brandish a weapon?
Who?
You. Did you ever brandish a gun or a weapon at any?
Oh,
of
no,
them?
I don't even believe in guns or, no,
All right. So if Mr. Spiller said that you were threatening him with a gun, that's not.
never. There would be no way.
All right. And so what do you recall happening after Mr. Benmichael's car left?
Okay, so he was gone. There was a little white car there. Peggy had gotten the car, and then Jason came around my vehicle yelling and screaming at me, and then boom, hit me right in the face.
Okay.
Down I went.
Okay. And what do you remember next?
I don't know if I passed out or not. I think I was in shock. And then just standing there, I think I was in so much shock.
Okay.
I was just standing there still waiting for the
police.
police to show up.
Okay. And that white car left.
They both got in there and was gone.
Okay. And by both you mean Mr. Spillers and
And Peggy,
Peggy?
yes.
Okay. All right. So it's your testimony that Peggy got close enough to you and was yelling at you, accusing you of
Yes.
inserting yourself in someone else's business, I guess.
She just said, you don't know what kind of trouble you've caused now. And I didn't know what you meant by that, but
Okay.
I
So if Mr. Spillers told this jury that you punched Peggy a couple different times, that's not true?
no, that is not true.
Were you ever arrested or charged with anything related to this incident?
No,
And Mr. Spillers and Miss, or Peggy, she goes by a couple different last names, left the scene?
yes, they were gone.
Okay. And ultimately you gave a police report that day, correct?
Yes, I ended up, the fire truck came, the ambulance came, the police came, they took my information. There was 2 of the witnesses involved that seen everything that took place. And they asked if I wanted medical. And I said I was, because my eye was already all red inside and my nose was bleeding. And so I said, well, can you call the ambulance was there? But I told them that I was not going to go with them because they wanted me to leave my brand new vehicle right there in the parking lot.
Okay. All right, I'm going to show you some exhibits that have been marked defense 21, 22, 23, and 24. All right, so we're going to talk about that one. Okay, so can you identify what defense 21 is?
Okay, so that is me right after, and I was sitting in my car, and that's when I was talking with the paramedics about what they wanted to do. But I was I just sat down back in my vehicle.
Okay. And that's from the date of the incident,
Yes.
correct? All right, so we're going to move to admit 21 through 24.
Mhm.
Judge, and then publish to the jury. Any objection?
No objection.
All All right, so this is the picture from November the 25th, correct?
This would be the next day, yes.
If the date on the picture from your phone is from the 25th, the day of, does that refresh your recollection?
Okay, so that might have been that evening when I went home and showered and
Okay, all right.
everything then.
Wait, you're the one that took these pictures or have
Oh,
these
yes.
pictures? Okay. Were these pictures provided to law enforcement?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right,
And the judge in the case.
all right. This is going to be this is our next exhibit. Can you tell us what that picture is?
That's just, I just got out of the shower, so I can tell that. Just
How the injury,
the injury to my eye, my first black eye.
all right, and do you recall where Mr. Spiller specifically hit you?
Just boom, right in the hole. I mean, I didn't even see it coming. I wasn't expecting it. And so he just got me right in the side of the face.
Okay, and it was one punch that took you to the ground?
One punch.
Okay, all right. Go to the next one. Is that the one I have in front of you? The other one you have in front of you? Right there. Okay, all right. So this is from November 27th. And again, that's the
The next day.
Okay. What kind of medical care did you have to receive for this?
Well, so I stopped. I left the scene, drove myself because they wanted to leave my vehicle there and they wouldn't move my vehicle and I didn't feel safe to have my vehicle sitting there. So I ended up leaving, went to urgent care right around the corner to have them look. And they told me this was an incident that I needed to go to the hospital for. So they actually went to Mission Hospital and they got me in so quick. And they took x-rays of the face and he had broken my eye socket and he had my, what is that called? The orbit?
Orbital bone?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically he had broken everything in this side of my face.
Okay.
And gave me, pain pills if I needed them for the pain and ice.
Okay.
And then I had to follow up a couple different times with a bone specialist to see if I needed surgery.
Okay. Did you end up needing surgery?
No.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to show you the next one. And then obviously this is on November the 30th. So again, just the progression of the
Yeah.
injury. So you're in this one, you can see the bruise to your jaw.
It was the whole thing. He only hit me one time.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then it ended up bruising all.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
And Mr. Spiller's previously testified about this particular incident. You immediately made this report to law enforcement, correct?
Oh, yes.
All right, and they took your report and ended up taking warrants for the individuals in this
Yes,
case.
for
correct?
Peggy, because she was right up in my face. I mean, like, for assault. And then, of course, Jason for assault and Benjamin because he hit me with his vehicle.
Okay,
And as far as I know, they haven't even been served to this still.
okay. And you were never charged with anything, correct?
Oh, no.
All right, and it's your testimony today that you never brandished a weapon or assaulted Peggy
No.
in whatsoever. You're not a drug user, correct?
No.
Okay, and you weren't drunk or out of your mind on this
Oh, no,
particular
no.
day too?
I am, whenever any of us girls go out, I am the designated driver because I do not drink.
Okay.
And I just never have.
So Mr. Spiller, your case with Mr. Spillers has been resolved, correct?
Yes, we finally got him. He was in California on charges out there. They finally brought him back here. And we finally did court, I guess, maybe 6 months ago.
Okay, all right, and
He
you were,
pleaded guilty.
he pled guilty?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you didn't have to testify in a trial or
No,
anything else like that?
nothing.
Okay. Did anybody in this particular case, aside from myself and Mr. Kessler, contact you about what happened on the 25th of November?
No.
Okay, you don't recall, you never spoke to anybody from the Canton Police Department or from the District Attorney's Office, correct?
Okay, not for what happened that day,
Okay.
but then, like I said, I didn't know anyone. So
Okay, so you didn't know any of these people
No,
leading up to that?
I still didn't know nothing for probably the first week.
Okay,
And then I found out about Jason, living 5 minutes from me and
okay, so you, because you didn't know any of these people, you weren't necessarily able to provide law enforcement on the 25th with their names or anything like that?
nothing.
You were just able to give them information related to the vehicles that they were driving,
Right.
correct? All
I
right.
took pictures and had tag numbers.
Okay. And in your mind, what you saw that day, did you believe that Ms. Driver was in distress
Oh, yes.
and that she was being chased by these individuals?
And kidnapped, yes.
Okay. And you just felt like you needed to intervene or help this young lady?
Yeah, I just, two men chasing a woman and it's just in my nature. I don't know. I mean, it's a valuable lesson that I learned the hard way. But I do it again, yes.
I have no further questions of this witness.
All right, cross-examination.
I have no questions, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down. Thank you, ma'am.
Right. There you go.
All right, we are going to take a recess at this time. We're going to be in recess until, we will say 11 o'clock. So leave us your notepads.
Bing. There we go. Yeah. Yep. I wouldn't mind having a look at those court records. He is a lying sack of shit. My
Call your next witness, please.
Defense will call Dr. Roberta Ballard to the stand.
What would I know? I'm a mere woman. Frolics on the beach.
All right, Dr. Ballard, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear the information testimony you're about to give to this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, you can have a seat.
Oh,
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Dr. Roberta Ballard.
Dr. Ballard, how are you currently employed?
I'm in private practice as a psychologist.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Sure.
we love you too. Okay.
Back in 2021, were you working with a forensic specialty group here in the state of Georgia?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us who that was?
There's a group, forensic psychology practice, based in Marietta, Georgia, called Forensic Specialty Group. And I started working with them, let's see, in early 2018.
And I believe you worked for them on a contract basis?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd been in private practice as a forensic and clinical psychologist since 2001 in Oregon. And then in 2017, I moved to Georgia and started working with Forensic Specialty Group.
When you worked with Forensic Specialty Group, can you describe the kind of things that you were contracted to do?
Sure. Similar to my work in Oregon, I would get referrals to do psychological evaluations of people who were somehow involved with the law, often criminal cases. So the referral would be a question of, are they competent to stand trial, or are they not guilty by reason of insanity? I also did civil cases, doing a psychological evaluation if someone was involved. Let's say they were involved in an accident and there was some trauma, things like that.
And what do you do now?
Well, at this second, I'm practicing forensic psychology because I'm here. But in about 2022, I wanted a break from the forensic side of my practice. So I stopped taking new referrals and built up my therapy practice. I also always had a small therapy practice since 2001. So I wanted to pivot. So I started building up my therapy practice. So right now I'm just doing therapy.
Okay, and can you tell us, where did you go to undergraduate school?
Did my undergraduate work at Occidental College. It's a liberal arts college in Los Angeles, California.
Okay, and what kind of degree did you get?
I got a bachelor's in political science.
Okay, and what year was that?
Oh my gosh, 1990.
99 or 90?
Bachelor's was 90.
Okay. All right, perfect. That's my writing. And then what did you do after that?
I went to graduate school at Kent State University in Ohio. And well, I started in 93. So from 90 to 93, I was in my early 20s.
So you went to Kent State University?
Yeah, and got my PhD in clinical psychology and graduated in 1999.
Okay, and then what did you do after that?
When you graduate with a PhD, you can't practice yet. You actually have to get supervised postdoctoral hours in order to get a license. And once you have your license, you can practice. So I did my postdoc in forensic psychology, also in Ohio, where I went to graduate school.
Okay, and that was Kent State University as well?
It wasn't. It was the Summit County Courthouse Psychodiagnostic Clinic in Akron, Ohio.
But you received your PSY doctorate from?
Oh, my PhD I received from Kent State
But
University.
you did your postdoc work at the Summit Clinic?
Yeah, I did my postdoc work in Akron, which is like 20 minutes from Kent. Yeah.
Do you currently hold any licenses or certifications?
I'm licensed in psychology in Georgia and North Carolina. And then I have a certification called PsyPact, which, do you want me to describe it? Because it's not particularly relevant here, but states have, 40 of the 50 states have this agreement where if you're a licensed psychologist in one of those states, you can practice online therapy with clients in any of those other PsyPact states. So I have a PsyPact credential, which means that I can do online therapy with someone who lives in another PsyPact state. So I have clients who live in like Minnesota and Utah.
Telehealth type thing?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So even though you may live in another state, you can work with clients in another state. It's just kind of a reciprocity type thing?
Exactly. Yeah. It was something that it's existed long before the pandemic, just to make interjurisdictional telehealth more accessible to people. But it has kind of caught on since the pandemic. I think it went from like 20 something states that passed those laws and now it's 40 because there's just more of a need.
So let's talk a little bit about your professional experience. I'm going to test your memory from going back into the 90s.
I'm ready.
All right. Can you tell us what your first job in psychology was as a trainee?
I don't have my CV in front of me.
Would you like me to?
With my license or before I got licensed?
Before you got licensed.
Before I got licensed, I had my postdoc, and then I moved to Oregon because my husband at the time was also getting his PhD in psychology, and he was doing his internship in Oregon. So moved to Oregon, and I wasn't licensed yet in Oregon. So until I got licensed, I worked at a community mental health center, and I worked in their older adult services. I supervised a locked unit of a nursing home for people who had severe mental illnesses and medical problems that required a nursing home level of care. And I also did assessments of older adults in the community where I would drive to their homes and do psychological assessments for older adults who didn't have reliable transportation, and some therapy that way too. And once I got my license that was in about 2000. And then once I got my license in 2001, I joined, do you want me to just keep going about my career? Okay.
Yeah.
I joined a private practice called Wildwood Psychiatric Resource Center. Actually, when I joined it, it was called Women's Psychiatric Resource Center, but they changed their name at some point because they were serving everybody. And that was a group private practice of psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers who, it was a traditional like office with therapy offices, and we saw therapy clients. And then in addition to that, I also started building a forensic practice in Oregon.
All right. So how many years overall have you been doing forensic evaluations?
Including my postdoc since 1999. So is that 25 years? As a licensed psychologist, not as a supervised postdoc, 23 years.
Are you currently a member of any professional associations?
I'm not. I'm usually a member of like the state association, like Georgia Psychological Association and the American side, and I let them lapse because I just never use them. I use a separate liability insurance and everything, so I just kind of let them lapse.
Okay. But you still maintain your license and certification in the state of Georgia?
Yes, yeah. The license is required to practice. Also, my husband's a psychologist and he's a member, and so I get all the publications and stuff.
Okay.
So I know I should be a member.
That's fine. Tell me about some of the additional education or trainings that you've received with respect to forensic psychology.
To maintain your license, like a lot of professions, you have to do continuing education to renew your license. And so the continuing education that I've done over the years has been mostly forensic and some therapy. So I've, again, I don't have my CV in front of me, but there's an association called the American Association of Forensic Psychology that, in my opinion, they do the best continuing education in forensic psychology. So I've been to their workshops all over, like they'll hold them in different cities, and I'll travel to a city just to do the workshops because they're really valuable. So.
Okay, since you have been licensed, approximately how many overall psychological evaluations do you think you've completed?
That I don't know. It's in the hundreds. I don't know if it's in the thousands. Like if I do 2 a week, that's 100 a year for 20 years. Yeah, hundreds.
All right, approximately how many competency to stand trial evaluations do you think you've completed?
Hundreds.
Okay. And what about criminal responsibility evaluations?
Not as many, because it's not as common of a referral question. Competency evaluations are the most common referral question. So, I mean, I mean, over 100. Yeah.
All right. How many times do you think you've testified in any type of court proceeding?
I don't know how many times in anything, including like civil and
Sure.
family court and everything. Oh, dozens.
Does
Yeah.
it still make you nervous?
A little bit.
Okay.
Not as much. In the beginning of my career, it felt like a really big deal, and now it just feels like part of my job.
Gotcha. Okay. And when you are being hired for these forensic evaluations, what is the purpose of those evaluations? What do you think your role is in being the evaluator?
My role is to answer the referral question. So if it's a referral question of, was this person competent? Is this person currently competent to stand trial? I'm doing a psychological evaluation to render an opinion about whether they understand what's going on in court right now. My role is to educate the trier of fact, which is you all, about mental illness and whatever like relevant diagnoses and stuff.
Okay, so essentially you're not being hired to be anybody's particular advocate, correct? Your job is to conduct the evaluation and offer your opinion.
Right, yeah. That's an important distinction with, it doesn't matter what side hires me in terms of, I do the same evaluation. And it just, there's an evaluation I do to answer a question. I'm not hired to like help someone win a case. I'm hired to give my professional opinion.
At this time, I would move to tender Dr. Ballard as an expert in the fields of clinical and forensic psychology.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so this jury has previously heard Dr. Garrett testify, so I'm going to ask some follow-up questions about forensic psychological evaluations
Sure.
in general. Okay, so what I think you've already touched on it, but what is the purpose of that particular evaluation?
Of an NGRI, of a not guilty by reason of insanity evaluation?
Yes, or competency.
Okay. I mean, the purpose of those are different. So should I
You
talk
can touch on
about
both of
this
them
one?
since it's part of what you do, so.
Yeah. I didn't do a competency evaluation in this case. But the purpose with competency is to figure out if the defendant is currently, their mental status currently, if they can work with their attorney, understand the charges against them, assist in their defense. There are forensic assessment instruments that have been developed to help us to do that. They're not required. You can just do a really in-depth interview. Sometimes it's really clear that someone's not competent to stand trial. Like if they come in to talk to you and they're really psychotic and don't even know who you are and are really out of touch with reality, it's pretty clear that they can't be competent to stand trial. Other times it's not as clear because they might understand that they're charged with something and they understand that there's a court proceeding and who what a jury is and what a judge is. But they might have underlying delusions and stuff that would affect their ability to like rationally understand the trial. So the purpose of the evaluation is just to assist the court in figuring out if this person is competent to stand trial. And then with a sanity, it's mental status at the time of the offense is the phrase, or NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. And that looks more not at how the person's doing right now at the time of the trial. It doesn't look at that really at all. It looks at what their mental health and mental status was at the time of the offense to understand better if there were mental health issues going on when the alleged crime occurred. And so the evaluation will rely always or almost always on partly on the interview of the defendant, but not only on that. That's one piece of information, but there are lots of pieces of information to take into account, like witness statements, police records, medical records, interviews with family members. I'm trying to just get a whole picture of what the mental health was of the defendant when the alleged crime happened.
Generally speaking, how do you come to be involved in a criminal type case?
Like practically speaking?
Yeah, I mean, so we have already heard from Dr. Garrett, and she's employed by the Department of Behavioral
Yeah.
Health. So based on where you work, how
Okay.
do you become involved?
Yeah, I've become involved. Someone had an attorney contacts forensic specialty group. Someone calls them back. It's either the office manager, or when we don't have an office manager, it's Kevin, the owner. And the attorney says, I need an evaluation for a client of mine, and they chat, and it gets assigned to one of the psychologists who works in the practice. There's not a particular like rhyme or reason necessarily to who gets what case. Sometimes it's as simple as like this is in Cherokee County. And at the time that we received this referral, I lived in Cherokee County. So it might've just been like, it'll be easier for Bobbi, like Dr. Ballard, I go by Bobbi a lot, to get to the Cherokee County Jail. So it's, we're all like qualified to do an insanity evaluation. So, I was, this showed up on my calendar.
And you, based on just the nature of that practice, you are primarily hired by defense, correct?
Yeah, things work differently in different states. Like when I was at that court clinic in my postdoc in Ohio, all forensic evaluations, whether they came from the prosecution or the defense or the judge, just went to this clinic that I worked in. And so, a lot of times, I would know who had sent the referral, but I didn't pay a lot of attention because it didn't matter. And then in Oregon and in Georgia, when the state hires an expert, they usually just use someone who works at DB, I always get the initials wrong. DBHDD, thank you. Because it's more efficient because they're a state employee and they're on salary and it's, yeah. And so I think the state just, in Oregon, I can only speak to the states I've worked in, Oregon and Georgia, the states just don't hire private practice persons, or so rarely that like our phone just doesn't get calls from the state for evaluations. So it's the defense who needs people, hires people in private practice. Yeah.
Okay, so based on just how the roles are kind of set up here in Georgia, that the primary contracting people with that group tends to be defense attorneys.
Yeah, and it's different even criminal versus non-criminal. Like I did civil work and I was hired by the plaintiff and defense, all the time because it wasn't set up that way in the civil court the way it was in criminal. And same with I did parental capacity evaluations and I would get hired by the state, which was DFACS, or in Oregon it's called DHS, and by private attorneys who were representing parents who were involved. So yeah, when it's possible, both sides hire us, and it just doesn't happen with the way that the system is set up.
But I understand your testimony to be is that you've done evaluations for governmental agencies as well.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and in federal court too, it was set up differently. So I've done some some federal criminal evaluations. I worked on the state side and on the defense side. So.
Okay. Do you recall up until this date how much the defense has paid you for your work?
So far, the defense or the state indigent defense, the state has paid me for whatever this 2021 evaluation was. I don't recall how much it was, but it was however many hours I spent on the evaluation in 2021. And then there'll be a second invoice for whatever time I'm here today for this trial.
So if you were paid $2,500 for your initial work, does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. That's about 10 hours.
Okay, and then so what you are here for today is obviously your testimony, which you will be paid based on your actual work involved in that and your testimony.
Yeah, whatever hours I spend on this and some travel expenses because I've since moved to North Carolina.
Does that have any effect on why you're here today?
What, the move?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
You haven't been promised a certain particular amount of money for your testimony, correct?
Correct. No, I'm paid for time, not for like an opinion.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So you were assigned this, I think you said it appeared on your calendar.
Yeah.
And then can you tell us a little bit about the steps you took when you first received this case?
Yeah. I saw that it was on my calendar. I don't remember if I either called you or emailed you to find out about the case and to let you know I was the one who'd be doing it and to get records to review before I went to evaluate Chloe, and also to let you know when I could schedule to see her. And then at some point I would get the records. It was all like online. There weren't any hard paper records. It was all like Dropbox, electronic records. I don't remember the question.
And that's okay. So the things you did. So your first steps were reaching out to contact me to kind of find out what the nature of the question was?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I think you've already told us that the request wasn't for a competency evaluation, correct? Do you remember approximately when in 2021 you first received this referral, or do you remember what month it was?
I don't. It was probably in February of 2021.
She doesn't meet the criteria. She knew what she was doing at the time. So guilty. Sorry. It's very, very sad, but she doesn't meet the yeah, no, she knew. She locked the door. Yeah, no. Bye-bye. Sorry. What about you, Hef? Look, I do think she has serious mental health issues. But at the time of the incident, I don't think she was in a psychotic state. I think she still knew right from wrong, pretty much. And that's it's the litmus test, I think, that she's got to meet that criteria. And I don't think she's met it. Or at least they haven't proven that to me. So, yeah. Let me know what you all think in the chat.
Maybe
Yeah,
January
I
or February. I saw her first in late March,
I'm with
and
you.
just knowing that my schedule, I usually had to kind of schedule things a little ways out. At the latest, it would have been the beginning of March.
Okay, so but it appears on your calendar, you start doing your investigation, you
Yeah.
schedule, and then you set that time frame out when you're going to go and meet with her.
Yeah,
But leading up to that, you're doing all these things in the background to prepare for that, correct?
reading whatever records that I have access to at that point, and and scheduling with the jail to do an evaluation.
At that particular point in time, do you recall what sources of information you had available?
Yeah.
I know you said it was.
The criteria in that that legal definition is very specific, and yeah, I played it yesterday, and there's no way she meets it, especially given that she expressed remorse for doing it. She apologized, but there was testimony from multiple people that she apologized to the baby before she did it. She knew what she was doing was wrong, unfortunately. Very,
Was a
very
Dropbox,
sad.
so that probably meant it was a lot of.
I don't remember what parts.
So sorry, stop it again. The other issue that they're having, like, she does have mental health issues. She's been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder or something like that, and borderline personality disorder. But she's refusing to take any meds. So, how much can you help someone that won't help themselves?
Of the records were Dropbox and what wasn't, and exactly how much I had. I know at the bare minimum before I went to see her, I would have had like the indictment and the initial police reports. I don't remember if I had more than that before I went to see her. I would have had just enough to know kind of the basics of the case and what the charges were.
So you receiving things like the police reports or police videos or that kind of thing
Yeah,
is
discovery.
Discovery. So you had that available to you prior to going out.
Yes.
Okay. And do you specifically recall what you may have reviewed prior to that or going out there?
Before seeing her, I would have reviewed whatever I had at that point, but I don't remember exactly what I had.
Okay. And what is the reason for reviewing those things prior to going out to see Ms. Driver? What are you trying to get an understanding of?
Trying to get to generate theories, as many theories as possible, generate hypotheses to test when I saw her. Some common theories when doing a forensic evaluation are, this person might have a mental illness. This person might not have a mental illness. This person might be attempting to fake a mental illness. They're just different theories to test. So I'm just.
So you would have already in your mind kind of had some things that you were going to go out and look for when you met with Ms. Driver at the jail.
Right.
Okay. And you indicated that you went down there the end of March of 2021.
Unfortunately, it's one of those mental health disorders that once they actually get to a therapeutic level and their meds have kicked in, they feel really good. And then they just realize, they decide that I don't need to take this medication anymore because I feel really good. And it's just this horrible cycle. But like I said, there's got to be some, at some point, where she is responsible for her actions, behavior. If she knows she's got this diagnosis, and she knows that, you know, she could, because she has had issues with cutting and all sorts of stuff, and it's her responsibility to look after her own health, mentally or physically. You know, my kids would shoot me if I didn't do everything in my power to treat my arthritis, you know. So same goes, big nose.
Do you recall specifically what day that was?
The 29th.
Okay. And do you recall on that day how long you spent with her?
Not exactly. It was at least a couple hours.
Okay. All right. And when you, and then you went out again a second time?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall the date of that?
June 12th.
All right. And do you recall how long you were out there that particular time?
Again, I don't, but it was at least a couple of hours.
Okay.
I hope
Let's
you
talk
mean
about the steps of your evaluation process with Ms. Driver, okay?
Sure.
Can you
Not
tell us a little bit about how you generally start these particular evaluations with the defendant?
I start by talking about, by obtaining informed consent. And what that means is reviewing with her kind of the nature and purpose of the evaluation, and letting her know what the nature of our evaluation relationship is, because it's sometimes people hear that, you know, you're a psychologist and they think that you're their therapist. So it's important in a forensic evaluation to clarify that this isn't a doctor-patient relationship. There are limits to confidentiality. So I let her know that because I had been hired by her defense counsel, right, that I would share with her defense attorneys anything, you know, that I learned, but that if I wrote up a report that was shared with the court, that it would be shared with the whole court, shared with everything, so that anything she talked about might end up being things that I would write about or testify about. I let her know her participation is not voluntary. She's not required to participate. And she was just told that she could consult with her attorney at any time and give someone an opportunity to ask questions about all of that and see if they agree. And there's a written form and they sign it. And so that's the beginning of the evaluation, is kind of setting the parameters for like what my role is.
Do you recall what her general appearance was when you met with her at the end of March of 2021?
Let me refresh my memory. The only picture I'd seen of her before I met her was a booking photo. And when she came into the room, I didn't recognize her. I thought they might have brought me the wrong person, but it turned out that she had, the booking photo, looked really thin and she'd gained some weight. It'd been about 3 months she'd been in jail and she'd gained some weight in jail. So, so she looked healthy. She looked, you know, pretty, she was dressed in standard jail attire. There's nothing really like extraordinary about her hair or anything. She just looked kind of normal.
Do you recall if she was medicated at that time?
At the time, although I'm not sure if she was taking it, but at the time she was prescribed Prozac, which is an antidepressant, and Zyprexa, which is an antipsychotic.
At any point during that initial step of your informed consent or anything, did you ever provide Ms. Driver with what the legal definition of insanity was?
No. When I talk about like the nature and purpose of the evaluation, I'm really broad. I don't even really vary it between different types of evaluation. I say it something like, I'm here to find out if there are issues around your mental health that are relevant to your case. Like it's pretty general.
Did she seem to indicate that she had any understanding of what that legal definition was based on your conversations with her?
No.
Okay. Did you ever get a sense in your interview with Ms. Driver that she was answering your questions in a specific way or to try to achieve a particular result?
No.
All right. What was one of the, I think what you've already talked about, one of the first things you're going to do is background information with the defendant. Can you tell us about what some of the background information that you obtained about Ms. Driver that you thought was relevant to your inquiry?
Sure. She said that she had been kind of a hard to handle kid. that hard to handle was her words, and that she did okay in school. She didn't have any like learning problems or anything, but that she left early because she was like acting out a lot, and she called herself boy crazy, but she said she was, just not going to school and skipping and just hanging out with peers, and had started to experiment with drugs. Her parents, she said that it was hard. She and her parents didn't get along, so they had even agreed to let her live with a boyfriend in another state for a while, but that didn't work out, so she moved back home. So she said, particularly starting around adolescence, that she was kind of unstable. And then she also reported some mental health, and we didn't get there yet, but some mental health things started to crop up around that time too.
And what were those mental health things that she brought up to you?
Mood issues, like depressed mood, and also really energetic, agitated mood, and also a lot of anxiety, some self-harm, like superficially cutting her wrists. She had at least one suicide attempt where she took an overdose of pills in middle school. And she started at about in her mid-teens, she started to have some paranoid ideation, some paranoid feelings around thinking, and also just some delusional thinking, like believing she could hear other people's thoughts, believing that people were conspiring against her.
So that started back in her teens?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What did she describe to you as about her employment history?
Not a real significant employment history. Let's see if I don't think I even included a section for it.
On page 3. Page 3?
Page 3. She'd reported she'd been with Mr. Joyce since she was 17, and that he prohibited her from working. And in fall of 2018, he let her get a job, is how she said it, because they didn't have any money. But otherwise, she didn't have an employment history.
Okay. And you also covered medical history and substance abuse history. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you recall regarding the substance abuse history?
She said that she started smoking marijuana when she was 12, and she was doing it initially to help with anxiety. And when she was 16, a boyfriend introduced her to cocaine, and she tried cocaine, but she preferred alcohol and marijuana. She also tried LSD in high school, and I think that was all that she reported to me.
Okay.
Until some oral CBD in 2020, in the months leading up to her charges.
Okay. So the only thing that stood out in your mind was the stuff that she had previously done in her early teens, and that and then was reported with respect to the CBD?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And let's talk about her relationship history with you. My understanding is that her really primary and only relationship was with Mr. Joyce, correct?
Long-term, yes. Before that, from age 13 to 16, she said she had a lot of boyfriends, but I don't know how, they weren't long-term serious relationships. And then when she was 16, she met Mr. Joyce, and when she was 17, she started a relationship with him.
And do you recall the age difference between the two?
Yeah, she was 16 and he was 38 when they met, and he approached her at a bus station and was telling her some spiritual things that really she found intriguing, because she had been wondering about spirituality, and somehow they exchanged contact information, and she reached out to him later.
What did she tell you about their particular lifestyle and about having multiple wives, and how she kind of conceptualized that whole thing?
Yeah, she said she joined him as his wife, even though they weren't legally married, and that she explained to me that he believed in having multiple wives, and the way she said it is that he made it make sense to me. Like, he explained it to her in a way that she accepted it. And
They actually provided her with, because none of them wanted her to be medicated, including herself. They agreed to give her the CBD oil. And she did say that it exacerbated her symptoms. But when she got to the hospital, they did bloods on her and there was no THC or anything in her system at all. So yeah, but she does definitely have a diagnosis, but the litmus test is basically at the time of the incident, and the motive, I think she felt trapped. She tried to get away to her mother's, and he took the baby away for 2.5 days and wouldn't tell her where she was, and she thought that she would never see her child again, and I think that she didn't think she had another way out. Yeah. I'll play you my song. That'll explain it. How's that? Where is it? All right. Here we go. Have a listen to this.
So my name is Nicole Driver, but they call me Kaylani. And my baby's name is Hannah, but they labeled her Nancy. I am married to Benyamin, but I'm not the only one. There is Jessica and Sarah, and I don't think he is done.
He calls himself a prophet, and we must follow his lead. There is no meat and no dairy, and the only drug is weed. There's no alcohol allowed here, not even a glass of wine. And he thinks that it is healthy to drink a glass of his urine. He lets us talk about our feelings, but we must do what we're told. I was 16 when I met him, and he's really friggin' old. And us women, we must serve him, or he'll leave us in the cold. We must treat him as a prophet, like he's made of solid gold. And I tried to leave the family to teach my daughter a new life. He refused to let me take her. That's not behavior from a wife. He thinks the CII is watching, and he must protect his cash. I can't even buy some good cream to treat my baby's diaper rash. I feel trapped and I am stuck here, and I wish someone could see the mental anguish that I now feel. They all say I am crazy. I don't wanna be around him, but I'm also still his wife. The only way that I can leave here is if I took away my life. But poor Hannah would be subject to his weird and stupid views, and I don't want her to become another person he can use. So in my mind I have no option but to go and get a knife, and I'll take my baby with me to the blissful afterlife.
Oh, I got goosebumps again. There you go. That is my summation in written form. Yeah, but the only reason she went back is because he had the baby. He wouldn't tell her where she was. Yeah. Yep. Hello, Cindy. How are you? Who will be live today? I believe there is day 6 live today. We are a day behind, so yes, I believe there is day 6 live today. Where am I?
Part of her, her job, it wasn't a paid job, but her job was to try to recruit other women to join them as wives.
And prior to meeting Mr. Joyce, you indicated that she had none of her relationships had been anywhere like that before, correct?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. They've been with age appropriate people.
And that it was Mr. Joyce who introduced this other lifestyle to her and explained
Yes.
it to.
Yes.
And she specifically told you that the way he explained it just made sense.
Yeah. There were a lot of things that he, quote unquote, taught her. She said he saw his role as leading young women as his wives in this world. It's very confusing. This world of there are 160 something thousand real people, and I guess they were some of them, and they needed to be secluded from society. We're calling this a lifestyle, but actually it was a cult, and he was or is the cult leader. She was a member.
Okay. So let's talk about what Ms. Driver reported to you in regards to her pregnancy. Can you tell us what you identified as being important with respect to that?
Yeah. She said she got pregnant in early 2019. And that before that, she and the other wives and him were living a nomadic lifestyle and sometimes living out of a car or an RV or at friends' houses. And well, I mean, actually that continued even when she was pregnant. But during the pregnancy, it sounds like that was the first time that she was kind of pushing back against any of these things she was being taught by him, because he wouldn't let her get prenatal care. He wouldn't let her go to a hospital. She had one ultrasound apparently, but otherwise no medical care. He did not want her to go to a hospital when she was in labor, but they had to go because her water had broken, but she wasn't progressing. And after she had their daughter, he made her leave against medical advice after 12 hours because the staff at the hospital were talking about calling Child Protective Services because of the, I don't know exactly why, actually, I can't speak to exactly why.
But they ended up leaving the hospital.
Yeah.
Her report.
Yeah, he referred to them as a satanic hospital when they left. And she didn't want to because she still felt like she wasn't physically ready, and she still had questions about breastfeeding. And yeah, she didn't want to go.
What did she tell you about how Hannah came to be named? Do you recall?
She said that he chose the name Hannah, but then also chose the nickname for Hannah, Nimsy, and said that it was short for Nimza Kazina, which I don't know if it's accurate or not, but Ms. Driver started to believe that that long name translated into I'm Sin. They called her Nimsy, I think, more than Hannah.
Okay, and so one of the first things that Ms. Driver indicated to you that kind of raised a little bit of red flag was associating the nickname Nimsy with I'm Sin.
Yeah, and it was part of a bigger delusional belief system around the idea that she, and by extension her daughter, were sinful because she wasn't legally his wife, and so she was sinning, and that her daughter had been born into sin. And so there was this sort of ongoing different delusions all around that idea that they were sinful. And that at times when she expressed those fears to Mr. Joyce, that he would reinforce them, that they were accurate.
Okay, and can you describe to us what Ms. Driver told you about their overall relationship, like from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, I saw her a few months after the death of her daughter. And she had very mixed feelings, and I don't think she would have reported them as mixed. I think sometimes she felt really positively about him, and sometimes she felt really negatively about him. It was kind of one or the other. When she spoke about him positively, she said, he's the smartest person I've ever met. He's amazing. He's gorgeous. He looks like Jesus Christ. He taught her so many things about how the world works that she didn't know. And he believed he was the Messiah, and she, had believed that too. So all of these sort of really positive feelings she had about him. Also, just felt like sometimes he could be really like affectionate and positive towards her, which I found out later is accurate because I listened to a lot of recorded phone calls that they had in jail, and that sometimes he could be like, really sweet. And then when she was in the other headspace, she said, I talk to people now and they say it sounded like a cult. And I think, I think maybe it wasn't a cult. And they say that he abused me, and maybe it was abuse. I didn't think it was abuse. I think that I deserved it. Or I think that he was teaching me a lesson. So, she was confused.
And it sounds like she had very limited insight into it.
She had limited insight, and it's also kind of a typical insight for an abusive relationship and for like a cult member. There's this theory called trauma bonding, where like emotional bonds grow out of a cycle of abuse. Because even in an abusive relationship, there are periods that are really rewarding, and then there are periods of punishment or abuse. And there's a power imbalance. So the person who doesn't have the power becomes very bonded to this person who sometimes treats them really well.
Right. I have a question. Are you still here, Udahealth? Why? I've just realised she meets all the components of battered wife syndrome. Why did they choose this defence? She had the trigger. She had the DV abuse prior history. She has the mental health issues. Why not do the battered wife syndrome? Why the not guilty by reason of insanity? She clearly had a trigger that they've testified to, which would show the advertent act. Maybe they chose the wrong defence strategy, perhaps. One for the old noggin. My brain does work occasionally. That's an interesting theory.
So by the end of that first time I met with her, one of my theories was that there was this trauma bonding going on.
Okay. Did she describe his relationship?
Yes. Yeah. And he was the trigger. So she has the history of domestic abuse. And it has to have like that advert event that triggers the extreme emotional response to the action. So I don't know. I just think that in saying what she's just said, because when you go the not guilty by reason of insanity, you have to show that you didn't know right from wrong at that time that the act was committed. Where self-defense, if she's got previous domestic violence history, then and she feels that she has no escape and that she has nowhere to go and that she is totally under his control and that he will take her daughter away. Yeah. If she thought that her and her daughter were in danger because she started to question the beliefs of the cult. So, and she didn't want her daughter to grow up in that environment. She wanted to buy some land and live quietly with her daughter. So, I don't know. Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there.
Relationship to you was controlling and in any way, or were you told what that all entailed?
She described it as controlling. So did lots of other people in witness statements, and I would describe it as controlling and listening to conversations, very controlling. But yeah, she said he controlled her food, he controlled her ability to communicate with others, which is basically she was only allowed to communicate with others if she was trying to recruit.
What is the definition of self-defense in this case then? Is it standing up for yourself? Is it trying to leave? What? There would have to be a definition of some sort.
A woman to their group, where she could go, when she could have her phone or not, checked her phone, when she could talk to her parents, which sounds like his preference would have been never, but sometimes she could talk to her parents, but he was always there monitoring it. Or if he found out that she contacted them without him knowing, then that was something that she would be punished for.
She actually downloaded a separate app. It's an app called My Second Line, and it's like a secret line on the mobile phone so that she could ring her parents or text her parents without him seeing it. And there was something else she downloaded on there too that I can't remember what it was, but yeah, she had to do everything in secret because he controlled everything.
And that's a really typical abusive thing, is to isolate the victim. Yeah, he.
Yes.
He wouldn't call her Chloe. He called her Kwani. He chose that name and told her that was her name.
Yep.
Yeah, he controlled her email. He controlled her access to social media. And all of this was
Correct. I agree.
kind of presented as being for the greater good and for this
douchebag,
whatever purpose, greater purpose that they had, that she was to submit to these things because
I agree.
For some bigger purpose.
Unfortunately, he's not on.
You indicated
trial.
that she was talking about some of these things is buying into it because that's what he was selling, or he made sense.
Right. Yeah. And for a while, it did make sense to her, and she didn't perceive things as abusive. And
she was only 16 when they met, and he was 38. So
it was after she became a mother that it was harder for her to buy into everything, because there were things that she wanted to do as a mother that she wasn't allowed to do.
Did she kind of express to you in any way that she was made to feel that those rules or that control was for the purpose of, or that she deserved it?
Yeah, that was actually the word that she used, that she thought she deserved it. She thought, like I said, he reinforced that idea that if anything bad was happening to her, she was being locked in a dark room or told not to move for a long period of time or hit or anything, that it was because she deserved that.
One of the other areas that you spoke with Ms. Driver about was that CBD use, correct?
Correct.
All right. And what do you recall her report to you about that CBD?
In late 2020, when she was starting to feel more unstable and have more delusions, she wanted to take some CBD because she thought it would help calm her down when she was anxious. And she felt like one small dose a day helped her. But then she said he started giving her big doses 3 times a day. And she said she didn't want that much. And he said she should take it. And he kept giving it to her, standing next to her, making sure that she took it. She felt like it was too much. And then it made her more paranoid. I don't know if it was, or if she was just becoming more paranoid because of her mental illness. I don't know. But regardless, she was involuntarily taking higher doses than she wanted to.
Okay. And we talked a little bit about the abuse, but can you kind of explain to you some of the actual incidents of physical abuse that she reported to you and how she viewed that?
Sure.
We actually do say that, don't we? Yeah, I gotta go to the hospital. Crikey.
Well, like I said earlier in the relationship, she said that she didn't feel abused earlier in the relationship. She felt like he was helping her out, and that he was doing it for a good purpose.
You don't go on holiday either.
She said he slapped her a couple times earlier in the relationship, but he never left marks on her until October 2020, when he really, she said, bashed my face, but punched her in the face. She was upset that, she said she wasn't upset that he punched her or hurt her. She was upset because he did it in front of their daughter and it was upsetting to her. She didn't want her daughter to witness that. So she was already feeling like she deserved to be hit. She was sin and had committed sin and deserved to be punished. But because her daughter saw it and that was upsetting, that was when she wanted to get to her parents' house with her daughter.
So there were, at least in her mind, some signs that she was kind of responsible for all the sin in the world and was taking that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And she would describe him as, didn't describe him as controlling or abusive at first, but described things that were inconsistent with that representation.
I'm sorry.
Sure. So in the beginning of her description of the relationship with him, she did not describe it as abusive or controlling.
She didn't see it as abusive or controlling early on. When she was talking to me about it, she was sometimes talking about it like it had been really great, and sometimes talking about it like, I think he was abusive, or so she was, like I said, sort of two minds and really confused and still like kind of bonded to him, but then also questioning it. So.
And without telling me anything about what Mr. Joyce might have said to Ms. Driver that she told to you, were there some of those things that she certainly now is actively questioning in that relationship?
Yes.
Okay. Did she appear, when you were talking to her about her relationship with Mr. Joyce, really struggle with how that relationship either physically ended or where they were at that particular point in time?
In December?
No.
Now, do you chuck a Yui? What's chuck a Yui? And it's not Bigfoot. What about get that blowy out of here? There's a bloody blowy in here. Where did that come in? I don't like it. Please explain. Yep. So you don't call it university, you call it college. Well, see, my high school was called a college, which you go to till you're 18, and then you go to university. That's the one. Chuckayui. Yeah. I said that when we were in the UK and someone asked me if I felt sick. Call it a U-turn. Flip a bitch. Nah. Chuckayui.
When you were meeting with her,
Yeah.
you said that she had been talking both positive and negative. Can you describe how did you see that as struggling or how with that?
Yeah, in fact, she told me that she'd had several phone calls while she was in jail with him, but then like people found out and it was stopped. And she said she missed him, but she's confused, is what she told me. And she doesn't know, like she used to think God wanted her to be with him, but now she wasn't sure if God wanted her to be with him. And she said, I think I love him, but I don't know. Like she was confused.
So she was kind of struggling with that physical separation and emotional separation.
Yeah. There's levels here. I mean, if we just look at it as an abusive relationship, she was struggling to get away from someone that she bonded with in an abusive relationship. But then there's the level of this organization, this cult, that she was struggling with the idea of maybe all that wasn't true. Maybe this greater purpose is, just, not accurate.
Okay. And we'll touch base on, with respect to, we'll go back to those jail phone calls later
Okay.
and how you came to talk about that. Let's talk about the mental status exam that you conducted when you
Sure.
first met with her. Now, you would have done that on both occasions, correct?
Right.
Okay. And the purpose of that is what?
It's to get an idea of how that person is doing, like at that moment, how what their mood is, what their
Yes.
expression, like their expressed emotion is,
Who's next?
how their thoughts are working, like are they rational, are they not rational, are they organized or not, just to get a sense of their mental status.
And do you recall anything significant about what you were able to determine about her mood or affect at that time?
Yeah, both times I saw her, her mood and affect were pretty much within normal limits, with some exception. She was like a little bit elevated sometimes. And by elevated, I mean like a little bit energetic or really like quick to like look incredibly joyful. And yeah, just a little like more energy. I understand from like reading other reports and reading records that she has been depressed many times, but when I saw her, she didn't seem depressed either time.
Okay.
And that's consistent even with reviewing the jail medical records, that she kind of went in and out of some depression and some mania or hypomania. Yeah.
And so she reported to you kind of some of those same similar depression type symptoms too, correct? And they were still working on
Yeah.
adjusting her medications and.
Yeah, she said her mood was a little better recently because she'd started on some Prozac, which is an antidepressant. So when I saw her, I guess that makes sense she wasn't depressed because she had started on some medication.
Okay. And one of the things you kind of are there to assess is whether or not, or to flush out whether or not they are still potentially experiencing auditory or visual hallucinations, correct?
Right.
Okay. And what did you note about that in that particular interview?
Yeah. It's not possible to tell just by looking at someone if they're having auditory or visual hallucinations. Sometimes you kind of can, but you can't know for sure because someone could just be sitting still and hearing and seeing all kinds of things. She didn't look like she was experiencing any hallucinations, hearing or seeing things. I also just asked directly if she said she wasn't at that time experiencing anything. She was very talkative, and that's what I mean by that elevated thing. Like she was, talking a little bit fast and a lot of words. She didn't seem paranoid or suspicious. If anything, she was really open. There was some pretty significant, like bizarre content in her speech, some magical thinking and some kind of just bizarre, ideas and some delusions of reference. So even though she wasn't like disorganized or distressed from any like psychotic, disordered thoughts, she had some sort of delusional thinking. One of them is she said she recently became concerned that she caused COVID because the word COVID starts with C and ends with D, and her initials are CD. So that would be an example of a delusion of reference. It has nothing to do with her, but she's like imbued it with some kind of potential meaning and gotten really kind of paranoid that she's heard a bunch of people, which is again consistent with previous delusions that she's had. So she was, she appeared pretty stable, but with some, psychotic stuff going on.
Okay, and that was even after she had been incarcerated for some time and was no longer on the CBD, those symptoms were still present?
Right, yeah, this was a few months later.
All right. What were some of the things that you were able to find out from Ms. Driver about
Elizabeth,
her history of those?
Do you have magical thinking with your CUD?
That paranoia or hallucinations?
I'd like to have magical thinking.
Similar to the COVID thing that she told me about, the CD thing, she said that in the past she's often felt like
it's actually a blowfly, like it's a big, nasty ass fly that buzzes around, especially when you're eating food.
she's evil and she's the cause of bad things in the world. She also just reported other hallucinations, thinking that bonfires are talking to her, thinking that trees are talking to her, believing that everyone could read everybody's thoughts, and feeling that everyone is against her. Those are all things that she reported experiencing, not at the moment when I saw her, but in the past.
Okay. And then when you are doing your the status examination, you also talked to her in great length of everything that kind of led up to December 8th of 2020, correct?
Right.
All right. What did she describe to you as some of the things that she was enduring during the fall of 2020?
She said fall of 2020, she was getting worse over time. And she was having a lot of paranoid thoughts and a belief that the
Yes,
world
the
hated
no
her. She said that her paranoia was getting worse and worse over time, and the worst period it was the 2 weeks leading up to and including December 8th. She felt like the people that she was staying with, which was Mr. Joyce and his other 2 wives, were all against her, that they hated her. She thought maybe her parents hated her. She was worried people were plotting against her.
Come on,
Yeah,
Robbie.
she was just struggling with a lot of, like, there's a word we use, decompensating, but it just means like declining or getting worse. Like she was decompensating over time. She was getting worse over time.
Okay, and what does it mean to kind of, for somebody with these type of symptoms to express that they have like a heightened sense of awareness to things that are around them? Like, what does that mean?
I mean, it could mean a lot of things, but she told me that she believed she had this heightened awareness of things around her. The way she described it to me is part of that. She could hear other people's thoughts, or she could cause other people, like I'm not even sure how to explain it because it's not rational, but that she was really more like sensitive to other people's thoughts and feelings, and they affected her.
Does that feed into some of those delusions of reference that you're talking about, like thinking that
Oh,
things
yeah.
have a different meaning?
Feeds into delusional reference. That feeds into her problems with having a stable sense of identity. That the people with psychotic disorders, people with schizophrenic disorders, really struggle to feel like, to know the boundaries, like where they end and where other people begin. It's very confusing because their thoughts are literally disordered. And so the heightened awareness could relate to this kind of not knowing the boundaries of where she ends and where other people begin, where her responsibility ends. Is it the whole world? Is it, the people, like all of that was very confusing to her.
Okay. And you also discussed with her what happened in November of 2020 with her daughter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then in the weeks leading up to this, what other things were going on with Miss Driver that you think are notable about, or that contributed to the decompensation of her mental state?
The black eye, when she was hit in October, that was one of the things that kind of added to decompensating. She had called her parents to get them to pick her and the baby up, but Mr. Joyce took the baby, and so she went to her parents alone and returned because she felt like she'd never see her daughter again if she didn't go back. That was really stressful. She also reported that she wasn't sleeping much at all. She was afraid to eat because she was having delusions around that bad things would happen if she ate. And again, these are those delusions of reference and the uncertainty about where she ends and where the world begins. So she had heard Mr. Joyce talking in the past about infinitely shattering if we don't all come together. Or those are the words that she told me. And I don't know what that means.
Yonder.
But at any rate, the infinitely shattering kind of got in her head, and she started to worry.
Isn't that like going, I'm going to go out yonder. I'm going to go over there, like out there. Going to go out yonder. No?
That if she ate food, she was shattering the food, and that might hurt other people. So she wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping for the couple weeks.
They like things that hold your pants up, your britches, like those elastic things that go over your shoulder and hold your pants up.
Leading up to December 8th. And those, we can survive quite a long time without food, but not sleeping will make anyone, even someone without a mental illness, like if you don't sleep for long enough, you will have some psychotic symptoms. So for her not to sleep when she was already psychotic was going to make everything even worse.
Okay. So it's your opinion that also kind of exacerbated the underlying mental health issues?
Yes. Yeah. And exacerbated.
No. The suspenders go around your waist and hold up stockings. Don't breeches. They're like an elastic thing with a clamp on the bottom that go over your shoulders and hold your pants up. I can't remember the name of them over here.
The frequency of the delusions got more and more consistent, and they also got more and more extreme. Like before, it was like I felt like I had to die, and then it was command hallucinations of kill yourself, and then it was, oh, well, it's not just you. Your daughter's a part of you because she got your breast milk, and so you both have to die. And so she was having these command hallucinations. that were getting worse and worse that she was trying to resist.
What is a command hallucination?
A command hallucination is kind of what it sounds like. It's you hear a command telling you to do something. So because you can hear just voices, some people hallucinate voices that you can't
What's a one-eyed trouser snake then?
even discern what they're saying. It's just like murmuring. You can hear, music, you can hear all kinds of things. A command hallucination is someone like you're hearing orders being given to you.
And in this particular case, what were those command hallucinations?
To kill herself and to kill her daughter.
Did she describe the frequency of how much that was occurring?
I mean, she was saying, let me see, I don't want to put words in her mouth. She was saying like they were getting worse and worse over time. And she felt like, I think she said like all the time, but I don't think that it was 24/7, but I think it was many times a day, like throughout the day.
All right. And she reported to you, well, let's talk about some of these signs or delusions of reference.
Sure.
Can you tell us what Ms. Driver told you that she started associating with these command hallucinations or delusions?
Yeah, she said she started seeing signs telling her to kill herself and her daughter, telling her that she should grab a knife, telling her you need to die. Initially, it was just you need to die. Then it was you and Hannah need to die. And she reported anytime she saw a knife, she thought that was a sign. When people talked about death at all, she thought that was a sign that she was supposed to do that. So pretty neutral, innocuous things like cutlery on a kitchen countertop were interpreted as a sign. She heard news on the TV or news show about a stabbing, and she felt like that was a sign that she needed to do it. And yeah, just all of these, pretty much, I think whatever would have happened around her, like her delusional mind was turning into signs for this to happen.
Did she express to you after the fact how these delusions made her feel, like, or how she was interpreting them aside from the actual action?
Yeah, they made her feel really anxious and scared. She didn't want to hurt herself or her baby. She was feeling forced, she said, and she was really anxious, and she really wanted help.
Do you recall her telling you anything about her attempts to get help?
Yes. She said that she was frequently saying that she needed help. I'm losing my mind, I need help. One particular time, on more than one occasion, she said she was afraid that she was going to hurt herself or Hannah, and that she needed help, and that she was ignored or given more CBD. And one time she said she held a knife to her baby's throat in front of Mr. Joyce and the two wives and said something like, "Why shouldn't I do this? I'm afraid I'm going to do this," or some, like, "Tell me why."
You ever heard of a sheep short in the top paddock?
This is Dad. Tell me why this is wrong. And their response was, he restrained her and told her that he was going to take her to a psych ward. And she said, "Yes, please take me to a psych ward." And he said, "No, because he's against government and medication." And so no further action was taken except to give her more CBD. So she wanted help. She was afraid that these delusions were getting stronger, and she was afraid that she wasn't safe.
Okay. So leading up to December the 8th, I know that you talked about her continuing to experience these command hallucinations. Do you recall kind of how these initial delusions and delusions by reference increased over time? Do you recall her talking to you about specific visual hallucinations or additional thoughts that she was having?
Well, she was saying that everything, by the 7th and the 8th, everything was pointing to this needing to happen. And there were a lot of confusing delusions going on. There were command hallucinations about do this, you need to do this. There were delusional beliefs of I am sin, my daughter is sin, we need to die. There were delusions around that if that didn't happen, other people would suffer. So it wasn't just I'm bad, but that it would hurt other people. She experienced visual hallucinations. Like she said, she saw a bird cage over a woman's head. She said she saw a camera in the corner of her room that wasn't really there. And she just said she started to think, maybe she was evil, and everything she did was bad and evil. And her identity confusion was also part of this, where she identity diffusion is this psychological term. It's basically refers to like not having a strong sense of self. And with having a psychotic disorder and having borderline personality disorder, Chloe didn't have a strong sense of self. That's probably why she was vulnerable to being like taken in by Mr. Joyce in the first place. But now she's at an even worse point because she's been declining. Her mental health has been declining. She's really suicidal and psychotic. And I think it was even more confusing for her to know like where she ended and where the other people or the world began. So her idea of killing herself and killing her daughter in her lucid moments, she saw that it was something she didn't want to do. She was scared it would happen and, you know, really like was afraid of it. But in her delusional moments, it seemed like because there wasn't a clear sense of like where she and her baby ended and where the world began, that it wasn't as, it was something she needed to do that was like a good thing to do. That was like the right thing to do. She was very
leather breeches, assless chaps. Those leather things that go over your jeans that like cowboys wear. Oh, dried green beans. Leather breeches.
Okay, and you've previously told us that, you know, this might not have been something that she experienced 24/7, but
Well, I
there's
was
really no way
male.
to gauge the amount of time, frequency, or anything like that, correct?
There's no way to
Well, it's
gauge it, and
magic
typically symptoms aren't like constant. And there are, I say typically, but it's hard for me even to think of people who are psychotic who I've been around, which is a lot of people who don't have little moments of clarity or who are incapable of, you know, goal-directed behavior. So someone might be really psychotic, but they could still, in her case, like change a diaper or, you know, drive a car. That's not relevant to her, but I was thinking of someone else. You know, but people can still do things and still be really psychotic.
Okay. What did she specifically tell you about December the 8th and what those delusions continued to be?
She said she was continuing to have delusions around hurting her baby and herself or killing her baby and herself, and that she was looking for reasons not to do it, but everything she saw, she interpreted as a reason it had to happen. She thought that knives being left out was a message that it needed to happen, so she brought a knife to the room because she thought that it needed to happen. She said she believed she needed to pay for sins that she had committed. She believed that she was, that anything that she was guilty of, she passed on to her daughter through breastfeeding. And she said that she told me she had no more will to resist after weeks of resisting.
Okay, so she continued, it's based on what she reported to you, she was continuing to kind of have those delusions of reference that were pointing her.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what she told you about when you asked her the question about her behavior that day. Do you recall what she said?
She said as soon as it happened, she regretted it, which didn't surprise me. Even as she was telling the story, she was crying a lot. And this was only a few months after it happened. And she was crying a lot and telling the story. And it also didn't surprise me because leading up to it, sometimes she thought this was something that needed to happen. And sometimes she thought, no, this is wrong. And she was so confused that she was kind of going in and out. And so after it happened, it didn't surprise me that she also at that point thought that it shouldn't have happened.
Is it also fair to say that could be after having some time to reflect on everything and now being medicated, that's how she might interpret that?
It's possible, yeah.
And let's talk about, she told you about locking the door and everything else. Can you kind of explain to us how that fits into this kind of in and out sense of what she was experiencing,
Yeah.
confusion?
Yeah, she felt that this needed to happen and that all the signs had pointed to it needing to happen. And so when she was she had stabbed her daughter and let's see, I don't remember if someone was knocking on the door or someone was coming, but she locked the door because she hadn't killed herself yet. So she locked the door in order to stab herself more to make sure that she kills herself.
Okay, so by what she reported to you at that time is that her memory was that she had already stabbed herself and the child prior to locking that door?
Yes.
Okay. And can you kind of explain this in the context of, that thought process and how it fits into her following this command hallucination?
Yeah. Well, like I said, she'd been confused because in moments of clarity, she knew that she didn't want to do this and she was scared. In moments of delusions are beliefs, right? They're false beliefs. So when you're under the impression of a delusion, you believe it to be true. So she believed that this needed to happen. And so she locked the door to help it happen.
Do you do you know or do you recall whether or not she had any continued suicidal ideation after she was arrested or released from the hospital?
She did continue, yes. And she reported, but it's also really documented in the jail records and everything, that she continued to feel suicidal. She'd been on suicide watch at least once, but in and out of medical in jail too. She medication had helped some, but she continues to struggle with that.
Okay, and at least those collateral sources is what I'll call them. They also kind of continue to suggest. Did they continue to suggest that she was still having these kind of delusional thought processes?
Yes. In fact, the detective records from interviewing her when she was in the hospital reflect that she was kind of in and out of. She was still psychotic, and she would kind of lapse into. I don't know if she was catatonic or if she was just sort of lapsing into, being non-responsive. And so, there were clear signs that she was psychotic in the hospital and in the jail records, when she was admitted,
Grab a quick
show that she was having delusions and psychotic symptoms. Yeah.
Do you recall if those records kind of indicated that she still had those same delusions about the need to kill herself or believing that she was part of sin, if that was still continued? Do you recall?
I don't recall. I know that she was suicidal. I don't recall the exact nature of the delusions that, or even if they were written down in the jail records. I don't recall if it just said that she was delusional or if it said what her delusions were. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So part of your evaluation included kind of making some sort of diagnostic impression based on the information you had, correct?
Yes.
All right. And what were you able to essentially diagnose her with based on all of the things that you reviewed in this particular case?
I diagnosed her with schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type, and also with borderline personality disorder.
Can you tell us what exactly schizoaffective disorder bipolar type is? What kind of symptoms and how it manifests?
Sure. Schizoaffective bipolar type is basically schizophrenia plus bipolar disorder. It can be diagnosed when someone has the symptoms of schizophrenia, but then they also have the mood disorder part of cyclical mood between mania and depression. The schizophrenic symptoms are hallucinations, delusions, and then the bipolar part is the mood swings and depression or mania, or both.
What were you also, you talked about borderline personality disorder. What all does that entail?
Borderline personality disorder is more of like a lifelong personality, like a personality disorder. And it's characterized by problems managing and regulating emotions and behavior. Like I talked about before, problems like feeling a stable sense of self. Relationships tend to be unstable. There tend to be rapid changes in like one's own self-image and self-identity. There can be periods of stress-related psychosis, like loss of contact with reality. And there are often risky, impulsive behavior. There's often suicide attempts or threats. And it's.
What happens typically, or what can happen with people that are diagnosed with both of these particular illnesses if they remain untreated?
Particularly with the schizoaffective with bipolar type, remaining untreated, it's just not advisable.
Okay.
I mean, there's no cure for it, but the way to manage it is through first off, like your first line of defense is medication. Having therapy and a good support system and all those other things, those are really important too, but without the medication, it's just going to be a real struggle for someone to stay in touch with reality.
Does having these two things exist at the same time, can that lead to any like heightened psychotic symptoms or hallucinations, or if stress is involved, can that make it more severe?
Stress can make it worse. Psychotic symptoms from schizoaffective disorder in the midst of a manic episode are a perfect storm.
Okay. Can you think of any type of example that could articulate that?
Besides this case.
Okay, that's fair. All right, let's talk about, so you were able to make those determinations regarding her diagnoses. I know that you and I have talked previously about kind of positive symptoms and negative symptoms about those particular disorders. Can you tell the jury what that particularly would mean?
Yeah, this is with regards to schizoaffective disorder. In schizophrenic disorders, there are symptoms called positive symptoms and symptoms called negative symptoms. And it doesn't mean positive or good and negative or bad. The positive symptoms mean there's some things there that shouldn't be there. And those are the things like having hallucinations, like seeing things that aren't there, hearing things that aren't there. Those are positive symptoms because it's the presence of something abnormal that shouldn't be there. Negative symptoms, I haven't talked about as much with Ms. Driver, but those are the lack of like expressed emotion. Someone with schizophrenia, a lot of times there's a deficit of like words or speech. There's a deficit of how expressive their face is. So they might say something really happy or really sad, but kind of with a straight face. It's an absence of expressed emotion or an absence of words. And I didn't witness it with her because she just wasn't in that. She was a little bit more hypomanic when I saw her, but I read in records periods of time when, as I was reading it, it made sense of like, that is like indicative of a schizophrenic disorder where she is not talking or not moving or not showing any expression. Like that's just really consistent with, those are negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Yeah.
Okay. One of the other things I think you, aside from, taking your DSM and evaluating all of this, all of her potential symptoms in this case, what was another thing that you consider to be a crucial factor in determining what her level of functioning was?
It was the environment she was living in. If she had been struggling with these mental health symptoms, not in a cult, it wouldn't have been so destabilizing. The relationship with Mr. Joyce is really clearly like a called coercive controlling relationship, where someone uses a pattern of controlling behaviors to create a really unequal playing field in the relationship. And it makes it very difficult for someone to leave because they become dependent on that person. They might confuse whether like the abuse, they might be waiting for the rewarding parts of the relationship. And her relationship with him was characterized by such an extreme level of coercive control, to the extent that, she was isolated, she was indoctrinated into a belief system. And I understand that like, religious beliefs, that's one thing, but a belief system that you deserve to get hit, you deserve to get put in a dark place for days or weeks, like that's abuse. That's abusive. So there's this coercive control relationship between them. And then it wasn't just a relationship between them. It was basically he was functioning as a cult leader and, impinging on the individual freedom of action of the members. In a cult, there aren't just members, there's members and there's a leader. And it's not a level playing field. So she, as her mental health deteriorated, she didn't get the help she needed. She got more abuse. She got reinforced in her delusions. She just,
What effect do you think in this particular case, the extreme level of that mind control and coercive control played on Ms. Driver? You could talk about it generally speaking,
Yeah.
but how mind control affects somebody, and then we can get into.
Yeah. Mind control is like a psychological term that talks about, to explain like how cult leaders exist, where someone will attempt to distort someone's perception of the world. And it's not like a magical or mystical process. It's actually just a set of pretty well understood psychological processes for controlling people and manipulating them. It usually involves like putting them in a place where they're isolated, where they have to conform, where they have to comply, where they have to identify with the group in order to get their needs met. So that was that and the context of being in a cult and the context of being in a relationship with a controlling, coercive person was just a combination of extreme mental and behavioral manipulation.
So just to be clear, so the delusions that Ms. Driver was suffering from in the days leading up to December 8th, those weren't just delusions based on these ideological or religious beliefs, correct?
Right. In fact, the delusions she was having that she was so scared of weren't anything that she was taught in this group. They were delusions. Yeah, they were just delusions that she was having.
Okay. And with respect to Ms. Driver specifically, like what overall life circumstances about her did you feel kind of made her even more vulnerable to what was going on?
Yeah.
With the mind control and everything else.
Yeah. Usually people who end up joining a cult have some kind of hunger for knowledge and guidance and leadership, and also hunger for like an ideology and for help defining their identity. It's often people who are in late adolescence and are just struggling. That's when like we form our identities, or at least one of the formative times for our identity is late adolescence. And that is a really common age for people to join cults. So she was vulnerable in those ways before she even met him.
And how does that vulnerability play into those pre-existing mental health things that were already going
Yeah,
on?
she already was having mental health issues. She already had trouble regulating her feelings. She had trouble with reality testing and having psychotic symptoms. And then in the cult, they became even more impaired. And they weren't, instead of getting help with it, she was, like I said, they were reinforced or they were ignored.
What were some of those things that kind of compounded all of that specifically related to Ms. Driver?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to her own mental health struggles, she, because of this group and because of him, she was dealing with extreme isolation, emotional and physical abuse.
Come on, lady.
Her mental health and medical care were withheld. Her food and sleep in the weeks leading up to December 8th were affected. And then the involuntary administration of CBD instead of actual mental health treatment.
All right, so in this particular case, leading up to December 8th, after you reviewed all of these materials and everything, were you able to ascertain whether or not you believe that she was in the throes of this kind of psychotic episode and command hallucinations?
Judge, I'm reading my objection number 74.
Said in the events leading up to.
No objection.
All right.
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Sure. In the events leading up to December 8th, based on everything that you reviewed, were you able to make a determination as to what kind of episode Ms. Driver was experiencing at that particular time?
Yes, not just based on my interview with her, but based on reviewing all of the different sources of information. I'm confident that she was in the throes of a very severe psychotic episode in the days leading up to December 8th.
Okay. And that's based on all the things you were just telling us about the delusions, the command hallucinations, the delusions by reference?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Lack of sleep, all of that combined?
Yes, she was just incredibly delusional and confused.
Okay. And all of we talked about several types of delusions, but all of these delusions kind of centered around the idea that she needed to kill herself.
Yes.
Okay. And I think you were talking about her kind of inability based on that time frame to distinguish where she ended and someone else began.
Right.
Okay. And that kind of applied to all the things around her, correct?
Right. Yeah, she struggled with, like I said, like her identity and knowing where she ended and where the rest of the world began.
And I think you talked about the specific, that she kind of associated, or one of those delusions included her associating breastfeeding with Hannah.
Right. Yeah. Her identity and figuring out where she ended and other people began was longstanding and something she struggled with even before she was a mother. But being bonded with her daughter made that an even more kind of ripe relationship for her to be confused about where she ended and where her daughter began, particularly like breastfeeding, because there's just this little grain of truth that they're sharing something, and that her delusions could kind of pick up and run away with. Then they were, one or blended. Yeah, this identity, like fusion is the term.
And I think you were talking about that kind of, based on all of the resources that you had available to you, you believe that created those periods of confusion, correct?
Right.
All right. Let's talk about, after you reviewed everything, you have no reason to believe that she didn't suffer from these symptoms leading up to December 8th, correct?
Correct.
And that's not just based on Ms. Driver's self-report, correct?
Absolutely.
There were other things that you considered, including things that had been given to you through the state of Georgia, correct? All right. Let's talk about, you ended up issuing an amended report in this case, correct?
Yes.
All right. And do you recall the date of that amended report?
Let me look. It's not so much an amended report as an amendment to the report where I wanted to replace one paragraph with another paragraph. It's dated May 4th of 2022.
Okay.
So almost a year after my first report.
Okay. So you had written your first report, and in that first report, you included, just like other practitioners do, that, you can revise, add to.
Right. At the end of every report, there's this paragraph that's at the end of, like, it's just a cut and paste thing. It says that the opinions expressed in this report are subject to modification if I get additional information, or I reserve the right to express additional opinions that I believe are consistent. If I decide
I think she's done. She's got 2 more minutes to go. I just can't do it. Oh God, no, she comes back. Holy crap. Oh. And I just had a look at tomorrow. There's another psychologist tomorrow. And I've got her on 1.5 as well. Oh. All right. Don't make me do it.
no, I think if anything, it again shows that her state of mind was fluctuating. And I think it's misguided to presume that anything she said a day later or several days later or something is stable. And she was always thinking that way. She was all over the map.
And I believe it was your testimony today that based on the information you received, including jail records and collateral resources, that those delusions continued months after the offense in this case, correct?
Yeah, she was still having delusions when I met with her.
We've also heard testimony in this case about hundreds of phone calls to Mr. Benyamin after she was incarcerated. Can you tell us first you reviewed some of those phone calls, correct?
I did, not all of them. There were too many, but it's several.
Correct. And how do you explain from a psychological standpoint this continued contact in the nature with respect to Chloe Driver?
I explained it in the context that we talked about earlier about trauma bonding, about a cycle of abuse, feeling very connected to him. She'd been with him since she was 17. She had a baby with him. Also, she'd been very controlled by him, so she was used to submitting to him. So it would have been more surprising if she had just not wanted anything to do with him. That seems like,
is that a technical
to someone who's not connected to someone that way, it seems like a no-brainer that she should have just wanted to run as far away from him as possible. But when you're in an abusive relationship like that, it often takes many attempts to get away.
Okay. And what were some of the concerns that you had with respect to the nature of the relationship based on the calls that you listened to?
How extremely controlling he was one concern. For example,
Objection, hearsay.
We've already stipulated to the foundation of the jail calls.
Still hearsay, Your Honor.
I don't know where you're going with this. Y'all obviously know.
I think she's about to say what someone else who's not here to testify said on the phone call. She can't offer her statement because it's party opponent commission rule on K2.
These statements that go directly to the state of mind that the state's arguing that continued contact is a way to counter any defense that we may have in this particular state. And they factored into Dr. Ballard's analysis of this particular relationship and formulating her opinion.
I don't object to the defendant's statement, but not the other person's statement.
Well,
All right. I'm sorry?
It goes to our client's state of mind in terms of how this statement's affected her.
All right. I'm going to ask that y'all return to the jury room for a few minutes while we take up a matter that we cannot take up in your presence. Don't talk about the case, and we will call you back in as soon as we can.
And
Yeah.
psychologically speaking.
Yeah.
Some people are more of a thinker, right?
yeah, I believe I was actually, I'm both.
Right. So an engineer may be a thinker, just like systems and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Someone that's in sociology, psychology, oftentimes people go into those type of work because they feel for people or they have the concern or compassion. Is that true?
That can be someone's motivation.
Now, according to the website ballardphd.com, your superpower is thrifting. Is that right?
That's a website that doesn't have anything to do with my therapy practice or my forensic practice. Yeah, I left a thrift shop.
Okay, my question, Doctor, was, according to that website, your superpower is thrifting, correct?
Yes.
And also, according to that website, you're addicted to coffee and salad. Is that right?
Yes, I just had a salad for lunch.
And also, your creative obsession is surface pattern design, right?
Yes.
And you, when asked to choose between the forest or the woods and the beach, you prefer the forest, correct?
Yes.
Even though you grew up close to the beach, is that right?
Yes.
What's that
And
got to do with
then
it?
on sessionsync.com, you listed that you were a drummer in a post-punk band. Is that right?
I don't know what session sync is, but I was a drummer in several post-punk bands.
A cellist at one point,
Still am.
and floral designer at another point.
Did the weddings
What?
of both my stepdaughters.
You were a painter,
I still paint.
knitter,
Still knit.
jewelry maker,
Yeah, on and off.
mixed media art,
Still do that.
and you do have an online presence to some degree, don't you?
A little bit.
You have a little bit of tech savvy.
Well, I hire someone for that.
Now,
Yes.
In your undergraduate degree in studies, you went to school in Los Angeles. Is that right?
Yes.
Occidental College. Is that correct?
Yes.
It was 1990 that you graduated,
Yes.
and you had a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. Is that
Yes.
right? Not psychology, not business, but political science, right?
Yes.
Is that something that interested you at the time?
Yeah, at the time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to law school or clinical psychology.
I would recommend not going to law school. So,
I don't know. Yeah, I'm in my shoes.
during the undergraduate degree, now most people have gone to college. The undergraduate's kind of not as focused as maybe grad school or doctorate level studies. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Did you study any of the Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Alexander the Great? Did you study any of those?
Probably, I don't remember.
But not fair to say, not much.
Not much.
Political philosophers like John Marx, John Stuart Mills, Karl Marx,
Yes.
because that's more of the political science side.
Yes.
How about the existential philosophers like Nietzsche, Heidegger, Sartre?
I had a class on existentialism.
Okay, but not much,
class,
right?
Yeah.
How about the religious philosophy? Francis Bacon, Immanuel Kant, Soren Kierkegaard.
I'm sure they were covered in some courses, but I mean, I didn't study them in depth. I'm no specialist.
Would it be an accurate statement to say that out of all the philosophy, it was not the religious philosophies you studied?
Yes.
No study in world religions really in undergraduate.
Right.
No studies in comparative religions in undergraduate.
Right.
No really study of theology, anything like that. No studies in the cults or occults.
No.
There's a term in theology when you look at world religions, when you look at different religions or makeups of different religions, it's called syncretism. Are you familiar with the term syncretism?
I am not.
Are you familiar with the word just to synchronize or to?
Yes.
And based on your knowledge and training and education, just your work experience. Syncretism, that could be something where people take certain things from different religions and kind of amalgamate them or put them into a belief system.
I don't know.
And that's because you haven't really studied religion much in your career, right?
I'm not familiar with that word.
But how about in graduate school? Really same level, not really studying any of these philosophies or religion or anything?
That
like
wasn't part of clinical psychology.
Okay. Same thing in your doctorate degree in 1999. During that time,
She's not there to give her opinion on a religion or a cult. She's there to give her opinion on the mental status of someone that belonged to that. He's very aggressive, and he's really cutting deep at her credibility, like trying to make her out like she's just some crafter. Like, I don't like it. Yeah. Yes.
time you really focus on psychology or things like that.
Yes.
Did you get any specialty certificates for psychology while you were at school, in graduate school, your doctorate degree?
Besides my degree?
Yes, ma'am. You can get certificates or specializations in psychology, right?
Oh, you can now. When I was in school in the 90s, forensic psychology was only a postdoctoral specialty. There weren't even courses, let alone whole programs in it. It was something you had to study after your doctorate. So no, I didn't get any certificates. I don't remember any even being available.
But since you graduated, there have been certain things or specialties or certificates you could obtain in psychology. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, by then I'd already graduated, so I didn't.
Let me repeat my question. Since you graduated, if you had chosen to, you could have got a specialty or certificate in psychology, correct?
I don't even understand what you mean by certificate. I mean, there are all kinds of certificates you can pay money to get, or take a continuing education class and get a certificate. So, I mean, I probably have gotten some of those from continuing education classes. I have no idea.
What is the ABPP?
Oh, okay. I think I get what you're talking about now.
I think you do.
It's not a certificate. The American Board of Professional Psychology is an organization. They're probably a nonprofit. I don't know. And they grant, it's called a board certification. That's what it's called. So you can be board certified in forensic psychology, and it's not required. In fact, Dr. Garrett isn't. My husband is, but I'm not. So.
Here's my question.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm trying to ask.
I am familiar with ABPP. That was your question, right?
Yes, that was my question.
Yes, I'm familiar with them.
The ABPP is a professional organization that actually you can go through and get either more training or recognition as a more specialist in forensic psychology, correct?
Correct.
In other words, isn't it true that if you have psychologists that deal with clinical or counseling, but if you really want to specialize, you can have the ability to get more study and training to specifically focus on forensic psychology?
That I have done.
But you don't have a certificate from them or anything like that, correct?
Besides the board certification, they don't offer certificates for their courses.
Okay. Do you have board certification?
No.
So you don't put your name, like after your initials, you put your PhD, but you do not put ABPP, correct?
Correct.
That's because if you get the ABPP certification, it's more of a title that you can show that you have either more training or maybe more experience, right?
It's kind of a feather in your cap. Yeah.
I mean, you're not downplaying. It is a significant thing you can do to actually.
Oh, yeah. Like when my husband got it, we totally celebrated. Yeah.
And forensic psychology, if you took the genus or if you took the overall category of psychology, just the big box up here, you got psychology, and then you got some tracks where people are clinical psychologists and they do more of the counseling or the clinical side, right?
Yes.
And then you got some that can go and do more of the forensic side where it's applied more so in court.
Actually, that's not accurate. Only clinical psychologists can be forensic psychologists. So if you've got psychologists, and then some are clinical psychologists and some are experimental, and then under clinical psychologists, you can do forensic psychology, you can do therapy, you can do assessment. So all forensic psychologists are by definition clinical psychologists because you have to have a license in clinical psychology to practice forensic psychology. Forensic is a subspecialty.
All right. So you would agree that psychology or clinical psychology is different, whatever degree you call it, is different than forensic psychology.
Forensic psychology is a subset of clinical psychology. So they're different in that all forensic psychologists are clinical psychologists, but not all clinical psychologists are forensic psychologists.
And if somebody was not a forensic psychologist, they did not operate under understanding the laws of Georgia as applied to psychology, as applied to mental issues in criminal cases. That person that doesn't deal with that or have any experience with that, they are not the ones that usually do that. They're usually doing something like counseling or clinical, correct?
Right.
Doctor, going through, I've got your CV, looked at that, but when you go through that, I want to begin with talking about some of your professional background. In Georgia, the last place you worked at, what was the name of that, firm or entity?
Forensic Specialty Group.
And when you work there on your letterhead, that's actually for your report, it actually has about 4 people listed on the top of the letterhead. Is that right?
6.
Okay, now the report I have, how many do you have at the top?
I've got 6 names.
Okay. Is Kevin Richards one?
Yes.
He has a PhD, is that right?
Yes.
And then after his initials, he is certified or recognized by the ABPP, correct?
Yes.
And then I think Christina Leiser, a PhD, and also recognized by ABPP, is that right?
Yes.
And then you're on there, is that correct?
Yes.
And you have your PhD, is that right?
Yes,
And then this is a firm that did a lot of forensic psychology, is that correct?
that's all they do.
Yeah, they're specialized in that, right?
Yes.
And they're so specialized that that's kind of really limited to their expertise, is that right?
No, in fact, Kevin Richards has done therapy and forensic psychology, and then he owns the practice. And then the other people, including me, are contractors. And because we're contractors and not employees, we're required to have other work. And so, one person's other work is doing therapy with adolescents. One person's other work is doing risk assessments. I mean, yeah, we do all kinds of things. But in forensic specialty group, we only do forensic psychology.
And if there was a box, and that box was forensic psychology, everybody in that firm is doing forensic psychology, right?
When they're doing a case assigned to them by FSG, yes.
Right. Now, at the firm, they would do things like types of evaluations, competency to stand trial, correct?
Yes.
Competency to waive rights under Miranda, right? Criminal responsibility or mental state at the time of offense, right?
Yes.
Transfer of juvenile defendants to or from adult court, right?
Yes.
Diminished capacity or diminished responsibility or mitigation, correct?
Yes.
Sentencing, including aggravation and mitigation in cases.
Yes.
Psychosexual evaluations or sexual violence risk assessments, right?
Yes.
Violence risk assessments, correct?
Yes.
Parenting, fitness capacity, and child protection cases, right?
Yes.
These are things not only that they do, but they advertise. These are the services that they can provide when it comes to evaluations. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, how many of you, for you when you worked there, how many of those type of things did you do for an attorney?
There were several things on the list you just read that I don't do.
Okay.
Sexual violence risk assessments I don't do. I can't remember. There are a few. I did most, but not all of those things. And that's generally true for forensic psychologists. They're just not trained, or they don't want to do like every single thing.
Now, those things I just listed there, how many of those did you do? I want to talk about you. How many of those did you do? And those were for a criminal attorney and a civil attorney.
All of the things you listed were all criminal. And the things I did for civil attorneys weren't on that list.
Okay, so the things that I just listed are advertised. You agree with me that most of those are done for a criminal attorney.
Yes.
And how many of those were done for, say, a private attorney versus a public, like a government attorney? How are the ones that you've done?
Do you mean public defense versus private attorney, or?
Right, so private attorneys, out of all the things that you've done that we've talked about, that you've done for criminal attorneys, how many of those that you've done were for private attorneys?
I don't know. We got a healthy mix of public defense offices sending us cases and private attorneys sending us. I don't know. I think it trended a little bit more towards the public defense office, but I honestly don't know.
And by public defense, you mean like a public defender or indigent defense, someone that's on the defense side, right?
Yes.
It would be that side of the courtroom, not the prosecutor side of the court.
Right.
Now, how many of those that we talked about that you've done for a prosecutor?
Well, like I talked about earlier, none, because the prosecutors don't call us because they use the DB. I'm sorry, the
department.
Yeah, they use the department. Yeah. So prosecutors just don't call the group practice, and that's how it was in Oregon too. Like prosecutors they use the state psychologists.
Do you understand in the state of Georgia that prosecutors actually can use private experts?
Yes, and I had forgotten that because I hadn't ever gotten any until my husband reminded me just the other day, and he said, "Oh no, they can, but they tend to call the same couple people. It's never us, so we can't control who calls us."
On the whole, you agree with me that the majority of your evaluations that you've done as you worked at this firm would be for criminal defense attorneys.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the types of expert consultation that your firm did. They could do things like research and prepare briefs regarding psychological issues.
Yes.
Assist with cross-examination of expert witnesses is on the website.
That wasn't ever anything that I did. That is more something that Dr. Richards and on here it says Dixon, but her name's different now, that they do in military courts. It's not something I've ever done.
And fair to say that your colleagues there at the firm that you work for, that those would be helping the defense prepare to cross-examine a government expert, right?
No, they get hired equally in the military on both sides.
Do you know the percentage of which would be for the defense and which would be for the government?
I don't, but since my husband does those, sorry, my husband is Dr. Richards, so I'm talking about the same person. I could flip a coin. I don't know. It's like defense or prosecution. It's both. It's all the time.
Sure, but you agree your husband, he's not an expert in this case or relevant to this case?
No, I'm just saying that the people at Forensic Specialty Group who do consulting on cross-examination work for the defense and the prosecution. I'll stop talking about
Now, most of the income that you made at that firm and the firm made, a lot of that significant portion of that would have come from defense attorneys. Is that right?
Yes.
And as you've gone through your career, I noticed that in your CV that you worked in places like Portland, Oregon. Is that right?
Yes.
And you did that and you would do things in mitigation of sentence. Is that right?
Yes.
Actually, on your CV, you have mitigation of sentence. Is that right?
Yes.
And that mitigation is to take a defendant that's being sentenced and trying to show mitigation or lesser reason they should be punished and should be punished less severe, correct?
Well, that's the attorney's goal. Yes.
I mean, that's what mitigation means, right?
Well, mitigating factors means probably mean something a little bit different to me as a psychologist.
Fair to say you're not testifying on the side of prosecution and mitigation, right?
In civil cases, I might have, but I don't remember.
Prosecution's not a civil case, we're in criminal, correct?
Oh, I mean plaintiff and defense, yeah. But for prosecution, no, they didn't hire me.
Let me talk to you about your professional training and presentations. In your CV, you listed some training. You did 2023 consultation testifying cases with child victims, is that right?
Yes.
And was that by any certain organization?
I don't know. If it's on my CV? It's probably the AAFP, which is run by the ABPP, which you were asking me about. Yeah.
2019 Ethics in Multiple Relationships, is that right?
If it's on my CV, then yeah. I don't
2019 Forensic Evaluation in Disability Matters?
Like I said, I don't have my CV memorized, so if it's on there, then sure.
If I'm going off your CV, would you have any reason to doubt that I've misrepresented?
No.
2019 Recreational Drug Use in Forensic Settings, correct?
Okay.
2016 Providing Psychological Consultations in Homicides?
Okay.
These are from yours. These are the ones that you put down.
Okay.
Was that for a prosecution or defense in those?
Yeah.
Either. If it says consultation, what does it say again?
Providing psychological consultation in homicides?
Yeah, that would just be consulting about homicides. They don't teach it to either side.
Oh, excuse me.
2013, you did malingering forensic psychological evaluations. Familiar with that one?
If it's on my CV, again.
Now, in some of your presentations, you did a 2014 presentation in cross-examination of a psychological testimony. Did you teach that? Did you present that?
Oh, I gave a 1-hour talk on that.
Okay. Was that to defense attorneys?
No, it was to civil attorneys.
Plaintiff's attorneys.
It was to plaintiff's attorneys.
And plaintiff's attorneys are people that sue people for money and things like that?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with oftentimes defense attorneys also were plaintiff's attorneys?
I don't know.
But in that, you gave a presentation on, I guess, how to handle cross-examinations.
Yes.
Kind of, this is what to expect and this is what you should do, or how you should answer questions, type thing.
Yes, crafting questions that will make sense to us.
You've given me the shit.
And then you've done other things. You've done other presentations. But my question, when it comes to training presentations, is it fair to say that your audience have not been police officers or anything like that?
I'm trying to think if I gave any presentations to law enforcement. The reason why I'm having trouble remembering is because I did do some public safety stuff with a colleague of mine, but I don't think that I gave presentations.
Set that one aside if it's just one time.
It wasn't just one time, but it was like, I don't even know if it's how relative. I had a colleague in police and public safety, and
Here's my question. Your training and teaching presentations that you do, they're not to things like the victims and the family of the victims, or victim advocates, or prosecutors, or police officers, or investigators, things like that. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I'm not positive, but I think so.
Now, sometimes I like cross-examination with experts. I like to ask them, you got your phone with you today?
No.
You have your laptop or your phone, wherever it's at. If I would ask you, if you would have more contacts in your phone or your computer, your contact, would there be more defense-oriented contacts and, say, prosecutor contacts?
It's hard to say. I haven't had any forensic referrals in a couple of years. So right now, there aren't a whole lot of attorneys on my contact list.
I want to now turn to another topic, testifying as an expert. What is total, I need specifics. So what's the total number of times in your career that you've testified as an expert?
I don't know exactly. I know it's dozens.
What does dozens mean? Are you saying 24 or more than that?
No, more than that.
Okay.
Less than 100. I have not been keeping track. Yeah.
Doctor, I assume every time you testify for an expert, you got paid. Is that right?
Yes.
So there has to be a log with something where you would keep a detailed record of how many times you have testified as an expert. Would that be fair?
Well, there'd be an invoice, but there's also invoices for evaluations and reports. So
Is it closer to 50 or closer to 100?
Give me a minute, because I'm going to do some averages in my head. Closer to 100.
Right. And has there ever been a time when you have not been qualified, where a court has said you're not qualified as an expert?
No.
Tell me the number of times in the last 5 years that you've testified in court, not at a deposition, not at a hearing, but at a jury trial, that you've testified as an expert and a judge has certified you, deemed you an expert.
In the past 5 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me think. Maybe 8.
And how many of those were criminal?
All of them.
And where were those at?
Georgia, in different counties, I don't remember.
And how many of those were murder cases?
Not all of them, not even most of them. I don't know if any of them were. I don't remember.
And how many of those were during the guilt stage, not sentencing, but actual guilt?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
How many times have you been deemed an expert in forensic, not psychology generally, not general psychology or testifying about counseling, but forensic psychology in the last 5 years?
All those times.
And all those times that you've been called, were you called by a defense attorney?
Yes.
Now I want to talk about your focus. That's your standard focus. I think you left practice in 2021 from here in Georgia. Is that right?
I think that at the end of 2021 is when I stopped taking new referrals.
And towards the end of the year of 2021?
Yes.
After you did your evaluation, your meetings in this case?
Yes.
All right, now, since then, you got on several websites, you have, is it fair to say that you're now online therapy for creatives who are overwhelmed, anxious, and depressed? Is that your focus now?
Yeah, that's my therapy practice.
And your specialties, as you advertise or is talked about online, is it accurate to say that you work with creative professionals and artists who are burning themselves out and that you're accepting, warm, and perceptive?
Those are words from my website. Okay.
Now, on your website, specifically ballardphd.com, there's under the personal view tab, do you remember saying that many therapists thinks it's not okay to share their personal views, but that's just not me?
Yes.
And then you go on to say, you give your personal views, and one of the things you say is, I am a defender of social justice. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
And then you also talked about in that saying where you're giving your personal views, that your personal work recognizing my own privilege and working through, quote, my own latent biases is challenging, lifelong, and humbling.
That is something that, yes.
And so you agree that everyone has a bias in some way or degree.
We all do.
Now, you also say on that website, I believe, as a therapist, I pay attention to the impact of systemic injustice. Is that something you pay attention to?
As a therapist, yes.
Now, some of you advertise that some of your things that you expertise are things like burnout, grief, life transitions, mood disorders, relationship issues, self-esteem, trauma and post-traumatic stress issues, PTSD, women's issues, open relationships, non-monogamy. Those are some of your expertise that you advertise, right?
That isn't on my website. That sounds like something from a therapist directory.
Okay. Are those things that you do focus on?
Those are referrals I would take that I can work with, but it's not something that I would advertise on my website because that's a lot. Yeah.
Is it objective to say that one of your specialties now is not forensic psychology?
Well, in my therapy practice, it's not. That would be inappropriate.
And I think you testified on direct that you're no longer really doing forensic psychology. Except I think you said here today.
From the cases I took through to 2021, once all those close out, I won't have any open forensic cases. I still am doing continuing education because I'm taking a break, but I'm not sure, when I want to start taking more evaluations on.
I want to move to a different topic now. I want to talk about your knowledge or your worldview of what you understand, whatever concept term you want to give it about the what you call the cult that the defendant was in. And I'm not going to battle you over whether it's a cult or not a cult. I'm not arguing over that. Whatever term you give the religious group that they're in. Fair to say that when you look at that, do you know anything about 508c1a trust or anything like that?
No.
Do you know anything about 501c trust is a charitable trust, just general charity? If I told you that 508c is more of a religious trust, would you have any reason to disagree with
I have
that?
no idea.
And fair to say you didn't really go into that with the noted that there were periods of paranoia, and most of those, you agree with me, were not when Benyamin was around, but it would have been during the time that she was using drugs.
Yeah, she said that she started to have paranoia, and sometimes it was when she was using marijuana, and sometimes it wasn't. And it started years before she met Mr. Joyce, or Mr. Benjamin, sorry.
And then it came to relationship history. When she initially met with Benyamin and Michael, they were discussing spirituality that night.
Yes.
And then she reached out to him a few months later. She reached out, right?
Yes.
In fact, she lied to her parents and left and went to, I think, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
I don't know where it was, but she left to join him.
So she lied to her parents about where she was, correct?
Yes.
And in the beginning, you agree with me that she was, quote, all for having multiple women?
Well, she told me that she was all for it because he explained it in a way that made it make sense. Yes.
And that on page 5 of your report, if you look at the second paragraph, do you see where you wrote down when she explained that she was all for it, but she says, but she also reported that the reality of it was toxic and stressful. It was hard to get along.
Yes, I would expect that of any group of 4 adults living a nomadic lifestyle.
So my question is, did she say, not whether or not you expected, did she say that?
She did.
That's what she described, how she described the environment, correct?
She said it was hard for them all to get along.
She reported frequent arguments, right?
Yes.
She reported that when the third woman joined them, it added to the conflict, correct?
Yes.
And then she reported at some point she returned back to Benyamin, right?
When did she leave him? What?
Do you know the time that she did leave him?
Yeah.
Look on page 5, third paragraph of your report. Do you remember saying that she returned to him?
I see what you're talking about.
And they continued their nomadic lifestyle.
She wasn't allowed, at one point she was allowed to visit her mom, and then she went back to him.
And then I think it's on page 6, the last paragraph. Do you remember the defendant telling you that when describing the relationship and the group that they're in, she says, you write that she became more frustrated in the relationship. And she reported that she began to take CBD to calm down.
Yes.
Right? But you described it as she became more frustrated in the relationship. And that's when she was taking CBD, correct?
Well, when I say that she became more frustrated in the relationship, it's referring to that above paragraph where the things she was getting frustrated about in the relationship was being controlled all the time, not being allowed to go to the grocery store to get stuff for her daughter, not being able to pick out her own baby food. And so the frustration in the relationship was around the control and the isolation that the relationship was requiring for. So it's referring to that. That's why I started it with the word as. So did I do it again?
Okay.
Sorry.
Doctor, you're getting a lot of comments, and that's fine. I want all this coming from the jury. On the same note, turn to page 7, fourth paragraph. You talk about these phone calls with Benyamin and some of the things and using the urine. But you agree that, like in the phone call and the urine, I mean, it's weird. We get it, urine and all that. But you agree that in that, you don't understand their culture, that maybe for them, and actually in that phone call, he was telling her because you may get sick if you don't do it, correct?
Although that is part of it, the drinking the urine part isn't what concerned me. I mean, you're right. Okay, it's weird, whatever, but that's not what concerned me. What concerned me is even if he'd been telling her to drink more water or something, was the way he was telling her, that he was ordering her. He was upset if she resisted at all, and he didn't move on until she broke down and said, "I do, Daddy, I do." So that was the part that bothered me, was the control.
I wasn't asking about part that bothered you. My question was, you agree that in the context of the urine, he was saying things as if she didn't do it, it could be bad for her health. Would you agree with that?
No, not really. He was saying you need to clear your head, and if they don't want you, if they think you're weird, just tell them that your naturopath told you have to, or you'll get sick. But he wasn't saying that was true. He was saying, here's a lie to tell them if they think it's weird.
And when it comes to the calling someone daddy, you have no idea, do you? If you do, let me know whether or not she even recently has said to anybody like Roger Giddens or somebody that she would refer to them or someone as daddy in a relationship context.
Sorry, I didn't understand that question.
You don't know whether or not the defendant has referred to other people in a relationship like boyfriend, girlfriend, and call them daddy, correct?
Called them what?
Daddy.
Oh, daddy. I don't know.
And you don't know what she said recently or anything like that, do you, when it comes to daddy and other people, right?
I don't.
And about all these phone calls that we talked about, these were in February of 2021, the ones that you listened to up around that time. Did you know that since that time to February of 2023, there was about 617 calls with the defendant, between the defendant and Benyamin?
I found that out recently.
That's because she didn't tell you about talking to him, did she?
Well, remember, I haven't talked to her since, June of 2021, so.
It's pretty accurate to describe that she had a much more robust conversations and her reaching out to him than you knew about, right?
Well, again, anything that happened after June 12th, 2021, I wouldn't have known about because that's the last time I talked to her.
Turn to page 7, fourth paragraph. In the context, you're talking about the phone calls, I believe.
Okay.
She stated to you, we had a lot of good times. You see that? It's the next to last sentence in that fourth paragraph.
Yes.
We had a lot of good times when it was just us and our baby. You see that?
Yes.
And then she said, we were a normal family for a few moments. It's something I'm really struggling with, right?
Yes.
And then later on, I believe you reported that you talked about on direct that she was crying, had episodes. Is that right?
Probably. When?
When she was in the jail, you met with her. You noticed that she was crying. She was upset.
Oh, during my evaluation. Yes.
Then on page 8 of your report, you talk about she reported frequent and lengthy crying episodes before I think she got on some mess. And it says, in feelings of, what was the word you used?
Let me find it. Where are we on page 8?
Page 8.
Yeah, where?
Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah.
All right. Last paragraph. You go back to the middle.
Okay.
You see on the middle there, it says she described her mood.
Yeah.
All right. She described her mood as better recently since initiating medication.
Yes.
She reported frequent and lengthy crying episodes, sadness, and feelings of guilt prior to her Prozac, right?
Yes.
But before that, in feelings of guilt.
Yes.
You noted the word guilt, right?
Yes.
You also know that she was still talking about religious preoccupation.
Yes.
And that she was attentive and concentrated to, her attention and concentration was intact. She was oriented to person, place, and time, and she knew the correct date. She even knew the correct president, correct?
Yes.
And then when you went on to things about interviewing about the 8, she would say things like, was she not, I felt like the other women were plotting against me. This is on page 9, second paragraph.
Okay. Yes.
She said, I felt like other women were plotting against me, like they were on a wavelength that I just wasn't on. They were all on it. They were mean to me and mad at me, and it played in my paranoia even more, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the specific actions and conduct that she did on December 8th, 2020, she talked about the reason she needed to kill her daughter herself. She said, quote, to pay for the sins I had committed. Page 11 of your report.
Yes.
To pay for the sins I had committed. That's what she said, right?
Well, I mean, that was one of the things I said, and I quoted it in the report. It wasn't the only thing she said.
She was in the room. She described being in the room, correct?
Yes.
She said that she, quote, found a knife, right?
I mean, that might have been the word that I used. I don't think it's in quotes.
So it may not be her word. It may be your interpretation.
Yeah.
That she brought it back to the room.
That she had brought a knife back to the room.
And then that she stabbed herself and her daughter and then locked the door.
That's what she told me.
And have you read Dr. Zom's report?
Yes.
And it's a little different what she told Dr. Zom, correct?
There's more detail in Zom's report, and
Right. In Dr. Zom, she said, I walked down the stairs, correct?
I don't have her report in front of me.
Okay.
So
Now, we'll ask Dr. Zom what she said. Judge my approach?
Yes.
I'm getting towards the end, Doctor, so I just want to
Yeah.
finish up with some things here. Here's some state's exhibits. You agreed with me that when the defendant was in the hospital after she stabbed her baby to death and stabbed herself, that she was able to give statements actually in writing, correct?
Yeah, she couldn't talk because she had,
And you have in your hands State's Exhibits 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, those exhibits there.
yes,
Right. Those, just to be sure we're on the same page, those are exhibits where she wrote out, being in the hospital, her answers, right?
yes.
It's her penmanship, her spelling, her dictation, it's her writing, correct?
Yes,
You agree with me that in the handouts that you had there, I think it's one of those, probably 104 and 106 maybe, that there were 2 Miranda waivers where she waived her Miranda rights, right?
yes, she did.
She was able to give her social security information, correct?
Yes,
She was able to give her date of birth, right?
yes.
She was able to give other information that she was tracking and had that in her head, correct?
Yeah, being disorganized wasn't part of her thought disorder. It was being delusional that was part of her thought. So she could give all this information. Yes.
Doctor, thank you for your commentary, but that was not my question. My question is, she gave that information from her head, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you're giving commentary. They can do that on redirect.
Oh, sorry.
Doctor, in those statements, like, for example, State's Exhibit 103, you remember that when she was asked, when the detective thought maybe Ben Michael did this, she said, and she wrote it down, he did not do it, I did it, right?
Right.
I was going insane, is what she said, and no longer wanted to be with his friends, but kept coming back for him. I only wanted my baby and husband, but he refused. She wrote that, right?
Yes.
And then she also writes, how long will my prison sentence be for killing her, correct? It states 105.
Yes.
It states 107, she says, no. When asked about talking about the knife, she said, no, I went and got a knife.
Yes.
And she apologized. She felt bad about killing her, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, specifically, when you asked her, when asked if she thought her behavior was wrong, she stated, I'm asking your opinion. I have to be very careful in this, in the sense of the rules of evidence. I'm asking you what she said when you asked her if she thought her behavior was wrong. She stated, 1, yeah, as soon as it happened, I regretted it, correct?
That's what she told me.
2, I thought I shouldn't have done this, right?
After she did it, she thought she shouldn't have done it.
And 3, this was not supposed to happen.
Right.
Doctor, in considering your evaluation of the defendant, including her words and conduct, she described to you in connection with the act of her killing her own child. Is it accurate that the defendant was about 20 years of age?
Yes.
That the victim was 13 months old?
Yes.
That the defendant was the mother?
Yes.
The victim was the child?
Yes.
At some point, the defendant was armed with a knife?
Yes.
The victim was helpless?
Yes.
The defendant never said in any shape or form that the victim threatened her to do harm to her,
Right.
correct? Whether it was right then or in the future, right? The defendant never said the victim, demonic or otherwise, attacked me and I had to defend myself, correct?
Right.
Whether immediately or in the future. She never said that, did she?
About
The
Hannah?
need to, her own daughter attacking her.
Right.
And you will agree with me, would you not, that the defendant, this defendant right here, this is the defendant sitting here, correct?
No. Yes.
She never said she was in danger of harm, death, or peril from her own child, correct?
Right. It was by her own hand that she was in danger.
Now, doctor, the 2 books we talked about, judgment approach.
Yes.
Yeah, the DSM file.
Oh, yeah. Do you want these?
No, man, I'm not about to do this. There's actually 3 books I thought about, but changed my mind. We've referenced the Bible, so a religious book, if you would. A psychological book. This is your expertise in psychology here, right?
Yes.
The rule of law, or the book of Georgia law. You agree that in this case, you're adding an opinion to one part, mainly the psychological part, correct? For the jury to understand and take in context the law, correct?
Mainly the psychological part. That's what forensic psychology does. Yes.
Each, in a way, can help the jury decide the ultimate issue in this case. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And under Georgia law, part of it is that a person is presumed sane. You understand that, right?
Yes.
And that you also understand that under Georgia law, that there is no defense of coercion or duress for murder, right?
Actually, sort of, but that's getting into the territory of like, I'm not a lawyer, so.
And that's what I want to get into. But ultimately, solely, at the end of the day, the decision that has to be made in this case, whether or not the defendant, as a matter of law, committed murder by stabbing her child 4 times, is a question of law under all the facts and circumstances that this jury has to make, not you, right?
Oh, yeah, it's the jury's job.
That's all I have you on.
Oh, dear.
We are going to take a recess, and I will go ahead and tell you, I'm not quite sure how long we're going to go this evening. I'm going to hear from counsel about that while you are out on a 10-minute recess, and then if I need to give you some additional information at that time, I will. Otherwise, stay up here with us, and we will be in recess until 20 till. Leave us your notepads, and we will call for you at 20 till.
All right. Zippity-doo-dah. Zip. Oh, this is Gabriella Kuykendall. Wifey number
Before you
1.
sit down, I'm going to have you raise your right hand. Do you swear the
Oh,
information
it's
testimony
not
about
here.
to give the court will be the truth, and the truth,
Whoa.
and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, you can have a seat.
That's nice.
Okay. Can you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Gabriella Kuykendall. My last name is spelled Kuykendall.
And how do you know Miss Driver?
I met her through Benyamin.
Yeah.
About, I want to say, maybe 5 years ago when I met her.
Okay.
Or longer than that now.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. You've been talked about already in this case. Are you the first wife of Mr. Benyamin Ben Michael?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you meet him?
I met him in 2013, and we had met at a March Against Monsanto rally that we were both trying to create. Sorry, I'm a little nervous up here. I don't speak well in front of people. But we were organizing the rally together, and that's where I met him.
Okay. How old were you when you met him?
I was 17.
Do you know how old he was at the time?
I believe he was 33.
Okay. And you met him and you at this, I guess, activism type rally, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did your relationship progress from there?
It quickly became very emotional. I pretty much immediately, within a few months, became his girlfriend, and then a couple months later moved in with him at his parents' house.
Okay. When did he declare you to be his wife?
Probably a year or so after I met him.
Okay. Did he give you a name as well?
Yes, he gave me the name Ilioma.
Okay. How would you spell that?
Ayliomah.
Did people just call you Oma for short?
I went by Ili, and then once I had my daughter, our daughter, mine and Benyamin's, I just went by Oma, and we gave her the name Ili.
Ili. Okay. And when you first met him, you said you were living at his parents' house or staying with his parents' house?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about how that relationship progressed. Were you both working, doing anything like that?
No, neither of us were working. He was loosely affiliated with a financial group called Primerica. It was like a life insurance investment company, but that he didn't really make any money through that. It's like an MLM sort of thing.
What drew you to him?
Well, I'd never really met anyone like him before.
For grooming, for fraud, for being a fuckwit. What law does that come under? Canal.
Or he just knew a lot about spirituality and religious sort of doctrine, I guess, and just I was very naive at the time when I met him, so I never really heard any of those concepts before.
Was he kind of your first serious relationship?
He was my first serious relationship.
Okay, so you quickly moved in together, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and tell me about what happens pretty quickly within your relationship with how he treated you.
Well, things pretty quickly had gotten controlling. He would just kind of alienate me from my family and my friends, and just kind of.
Okay. Did he impose certain rules upon you or things that you had to live by?
You mean early on, or?
Yeah, about your ability to go out in public or hang out with other people.
Well, at first we just went out together and there was really no problem. But at a certain point, he, if I wanted to go see my friends or my family, he didn't want me to do that.
Okay. Did you have limitations on any of your cell phones, emails, or social media?
Yes, absolutely. I primarily used Facebook Messenger to talk to people that I knew, my friends from high school and stuff. And he would always be controlling the conversation, or whenever I talked to my sister, which is mainly the only person in my family he would let me talk to, he would be right there. The phone would be on speaker and he would be telling me what to say, basically. I couldn't actually have a real conversation with anyone.
Did he go through your phone frequently?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did he take your phone away from you at times?
At times, yeah, when he thought, when I wasn't really happy being there with him and I might want to leave, he would take my phone so I wouldn't be able to leave and call anyone or text anyone to come get me.
Okay. And you said he monitored your social media or your emails as well?
Yeah.
Okay. At what point did your relationship turn physically abusive?
I would say within the first 6 months.
What are some of the things that you experienced with him?
Well, he would, hit me. There's this one instance, it was one of the worst, I would say, where I wanted to leave. And he had took duct tape and duct taped my entire torso to where I couldn't really breathe very well. And he had just started like beating my face, like really bad, open-handed, not close-handed, but he just open-handed. I was like just seeing the light.
Okay. And there were some other incidents as well, some of that which got reported to law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, there is a police report about the time where he had me in his basement, and he basically told me that he was going to kill me, and he had a machete to my throat, and he just went into detail like how he was going to do it and how he was going to get away with it. No one would ever know, and I was convinced at the time. It was very frightening. And his father came downstairs because he had heard probably me crying or something, and he got involved, and then Benyamin kept his father and his mother and me all hostage and wouldn't let us use the phones to call the police.
After the machete incident, why didn't you leave?
It was just one of those like back and forth sort of like codependent toxic relationships, and it was really hard to get away because every time I left,
Yes.
I felt like empty, like I had no purpose to live. I just like would want to kill myself. And so he was like my main source of like everything, just like my reason to live. At a certain point, I was absolutely completely dependent.
We can't go through a stream without you to have hottie. It's compulsory, sorry. And I would agree with you.
Dependent on him emotionally.
When you would leave, would you all start talking or texting again? And
I would leave and I would try to not talk to him, and then at a certain point I would, he would just be incessantly messaging me, usually is how that happened, and I would just text him back. I'd be triggered and I would just text him back, and then he had a way of sucking me right back in.
Did he proclaim you to be one of his wives before or after the machete incident? Do you recall?
I believe it was after that.
Did he make any kind of demands to you about wanting to have children with you or others?
Yeah, he said the only way that I could be his wife exclusively is if I had a child with him in the next year. He kind of gave me like a time limit for that. It's just
and
weird.
so you ended up getting pregnant with your daughter?
Yeah, I believe within that time frame. Yeah.
Okay. After you got pregnant with your daughter, was he still emotionally or physically abusive with you?
Always emotionally abusive. Physically, it kind of dwindled a little bit because, I was pregnant at that point, and there was a few instances where he would like to like suffocate me. And that happened once that I remember while I was pregnant.
Okay. And when you were pregnant, you kind of continued on this nomadic lifestyle, correct?
Yeah, we were just kind of all over the East Coast, just bouncing around from couch to couch.
Yeah.
And right before, a few months before I gave birth to my daughter, we stayed at his parents' house and kind of settled in there. And I decided that I would get I would see a prenatal doctor for, to make sure everything was okay, because he didn't want me to have any prenatal care or give birth in a hospital or anything like that.
Okay, so you kind of tried to take the lead on that.
Oh yeah, at a certain point I started realizing it was like I had a real person that I was about to create, and that they needed that sort of thing.
Okay. During this time, even continuing into your pregnancy, were you still not allowed to go out on your own, or did he regularly check your phone or still control who you talked to or communicated with?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Same as social media or email?
Yeah, that never really changed until the end, when I started gaining more self-confidence and really realizing that I could leave really the relationship.
Okay, and so you had your daughter in August of 2016, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And where did you go from there? Where did you go stay?
We pretty much immediately left his parents' house, and we kind of bounced around for a little bit, I think 2 weeks or so, just couch surfing, friends we knew. And then we ended up at Jerry's house, Jerry Evelyn.
Okay, and how long were you at Jerry's house, do you think?
We were there a couple of months, at least 2-3 months.
Okay. And to clarify with you, you were his first wife, technically, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But you are somebody different that left Mr. Ablin's house at a different time. You only know about that through other parties, correct?
I only know about what through the.
Someone else leaving Mr. Ablin's house in a different way. We're not talking, correct?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about your overall relationship. You're still living this kind of nomadic lifestyle. You had your daughter. Was he allowing you to take your daughter places or get any type of early care?
I believe we went to the doctor once after she was born because DCF had gotten involved immediately at the hospital because his mother was there and told them like he was crazy. And so they immediately got involved, and we went to a doctor's appointment because we had to for the DCF case. And then we just left and sort of abandoned the case. And yeah.
What was the first time you went to leave Mr. Michael? What was the precipitating incident that finally, at least for that first time, got you away from him?
You mean after I had my daughter?
Yes.
Okay. Because before that, I tried to leave many times and did leave and would, go back and forth. But let's see, like, I guess the straw that broke the camel's back would be when I was staying at Jerry's house with him, and my sister came down for a visit, and he was trying to rope her into the whole polyamory thing. And it's one thing for, it just crossed the line for me with my sister to have her have to deal with that sort of thing,
Was that the first time that your sister kind of got an inside look into the life that you had been leading with him?
No, she knew very well. Like when I would leave him at certain points, I told her everything that happened,
But ultimately, you would be drawn right back to him, kind of based on the bond that you had with him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you ever, and this is a personal question, have you ever been diagnosed with any mental health issues or anything like that? Okay. And when this incident with your sister, and he, I guess, invited your sister to be part of your group, how did you manage to get away from him on that particular occasion?
Well, yeah, my sister was there, so she had a car. And she was very, emotionally supportive of me leaving him. And so, I just told him we were leaving. At that point I felt like I could, and I said, we're leaving. I'm leaving with my sister, and I just left.
Okay. But yet prior to that, you didn't have a car or anything else on your own?
Yeah, no, prior to that, it was just like me and him, or, we'd be at Jerry's house, so he would be there, but, there was no leaving. There was no going anywhere, like unless I just took my daughter and walked away, and then that would be pretty difficult.
Okay, so you left with your sister and your daughter that particular time. How long were you away from him at that point?
I think I stayed away from him for about a month or so, and I moved into a farm in Florida, and I tried to establish some roots for myself and become financially stable and not have to rely on him. And then, he just threatening me with, taking my daughter away and stuff like that, getting the courts involved. He said, oh, when we're done with you, you're going to be left drooling in a mental institution, stuff like that.
Right.
And it scared me. I was like, I don't know what could happen. Like if he paid someone enough money, like a good lawyer or whatever, I don't know what he could convince someone of, because he's very convincing. But yeah, so what was the original question?
So how did you end up going back to him with your daughter after that?
So yeah, we had been talking, and I didn't want to burden the people whose farm I was staying at. I didn't want to burden them with this crazy person, so I just left, and we stayed in Florida, in Tampa, and
And what would you do to him if you got your hands on him, have? I know what I'd do.
lived in a tent, just homeless, with pretty much nothing.
Okay. What drew you back to him at that point in time?
Really just, he was incessant about wanting to see his daughter. And, as we spent some time apart, I thought, maybe it'd be okay if he saw her and, maybe it'll be okay. I don't know.
When you were apart from him, how would you describe how you felt inside, or what kind of feelings did you experience when you were not around him?
Well, for a really long time, I would just feel empty. I had absolutely no reason to continue on. And he always made me he tried to make me think that about myself, that I was nothing without him. And he was the entire purpose for my existence, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And at times
He's not worth the steam off your shit. in my opinion. Just saying.
Or feeling suicidal?
Oh, absolutely. There are many times.
Okay. And so you are living with your daughter and him in a tent in Florida. How old was your daughter at that time?
She was about 6 months old.
Okay. And kind of what was the next, I guess, red flag or thing that happened with you in that regard?
Well, just after years of nothing ever really changing, and I was always like struggling so badly. And we were just, living in this tent. We had nothing. We were beggars, and we had hardly anything to eat at really any point. My daughter was exclusively breastfeeding, so she was getting what she needed, but I could barely get by. It was just draining it out of me. And there's only so long, someone can do that for before they become malnourished. So I just reached out to my dad and I said, please just come get me. I need to get out of this situation. This is like, it wasn't really rock bottom because there have been worse points, but that was a really low point.
Okay. Did he, during this time that you got back together with him, did he make threats about your daughter if you had left again, or what he would do?
Well, yeah, the last time that I actually ever saw him and that he saw our daughter, I was with Chloe and we were on a trip going to Asheville. And it was like over the course of like 3 days, and he had made threats that he would take my daughter and just disappear with her and I would never see her again. And that just scared me so bad. I was like, oh, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. I'm not going to let that happen. So after that, I vowed to never see him again. And that's how it's been so far.
Okay. And you currently have a case pending in the state of Tennessee with Mr. Benyamin, correct?
Yes.
And because you've remarried, correct?
Yes.
All right. And your current husband is trying to adopt your daughter, correct? Okay. Is that your motivation for being here today or trying to help Ms. Driver at all?
No, actually, when I told my lawyer about this to make sure it was okay that I came here and there was like no conflict of interest or anything like that, I said, oh, would you like to speak to her lawyer to just get a better idea of, who this guy is that we're dealing with? And he said, no, that there's, no reason. We have all we need for our court case because it's just simply based on his abandonment of his daughter. So there's really, and the fact that I feel guilty, because Chloe tried to reach out to me a few times, and I just, I spoke with her and kind of told her how my relationship with Benyamin went, but I just felt like I wasn't getting through to her and that she would just kind of have to learn on her own, and I feel really guilty about not trying to help her more.
Okay. So you have not seen or heard or talked to Benyamin since when?
We have spoken a few times over the course of the last 6.5, 7 years since he's seen his daughter, just mainly like through text or email and just very limited,
Is it about your daughter, generally speaking?
Not really, never really about her, but yeah.
Okay, so you left this relationship with your daughter and kind of didn't look back at this last time, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And then you got a call from the Canton Police Department on December 14th of 2020, correct?
Yep.
All right. And in that phone call, you kind of learned about this whole circumstance, correct?
Yes.
And you provided Detective Cruz at that time all of the information regarding your relationship with Mr. Benyamin, correct?
Yep.
And kind of talked to him or her about your relationship with him and how things ended and that kind of thing, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Did you tell Detective Cruz anything about you being concerned about a potential abuse against Chloe? Do you recall?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. Do you remember talking to Detective Cruz in that phone call about that you had been concerned about Chloe or that she might have been being abused?
Yeah, when I first got the call, I thought that Benyamin had, because she didn't tell me exactly what happened, and I just thought Benyamin had killed Chloe. That was my first thought because of his abusive nature. So I thought maybe it got out of hand, and yeah.
Okay. And you've talked to us today about some of the incidents of physical abuse, but is it fair to say that's just a small snippet of what you actually endured in that time that you were with him?
Yeah, there were multiple instances of abuse that went on.
Did you feel like that you were free to leave whenever you wanted?
Not really. I mean, there were good.
And she was down your way too, in a tent.
good points, I guess, like just like more normal points where I guess his mental illness like would kind of relax, and then there would be points where it would ramp up like really bad, and he would just start acting totally crazy, like talking in tongues and screaming, and being abusive physically. And so it was really.
Why has no one pressed any charges against this prick? Why isn't he on trial?
At those points that I wanted to leave, and that's when he would have more of a grip on, like, he could tell that I wanted to leave, so he would be more controlling at those points.
Okay. Is he still trying to, I guess, take your daughter away is not the right word, but is he still trying to kind of manipulate that relationship with you?
You mean manipulate?
Well, when you filed this adoption case, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and then he turned around and filed something different.
He wanted like visitation, like after like 6.5 years of not seeing my daughter, or even asking to see her. So he wanted visitation. And so I immediately filed the adoption.
But he hasn't seen your daughter in 6+ years, I guess.
No. And after, after the whole incident with Chloe and him happened, and things kind of cooled down over a month or so, I told him that he could see his daughter for some reason. And so it was just over 9 months that I was telling him we were trying to make plans where he would come and see her. He's like, oh, I just need to get my RV fixed. And it was always like an excuse. It was like 9 months later after that incident that he never saw her during that entire time, even though I was like 100% like open and willing to it. And so at that point I was like, yeah, I just stopped talking to him, because it wouldn't be right for him to just go in and out of my daughter's life like that.
During this time period, have you kind of tried to live off the radar to avoid contact with him, or him being able to find out where you are?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm constantly thinking about, like, at any point if he might show up, and try to take my daughter or hurt me,
In your experience with him and trying to leave, he would basically tell you that you would never see your daughter again, or he would take steps that way to make sure that happened?
Yeah, there are multiple instances where he threatened that I would never see my daughter, either because, he would win in the courts, or he would physically take her, like abduct her and take her away from me, and I would never be able to find him or my daughter.
But it's your testimony here today that your experience with him in the relationship, you endured physical abuse.
Yeah.
Okay. And emotional and mental abuse as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And that he controlled your phone, who you talked to, who you spoke to, wrote emails to, or connected with on social media, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And that was kind of one of the rules that you had to live by to be in that relationship, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And that it took you several different times.
I've got a feeling, just from reading the text messages that the other dickhead sent, Jason Spillers, that he was sending, that he's actually going to court for now, like he's in custody for now. I think that perhaps being a virgin was very important to them, I think, because the Jason guy was after virgins. So that maybe that's perhaps why they preyed on the 16, 17-year-olds.
Of leaving and coming back before you were finally able to break away from that, correct?
Yeah, it was a terrible cycle of leaving, coming back, leaving, coming back.
Okay. And to this day, what do you attribute as sort of the reason why you were finally able to get away from him entirely?
I guess I would say, well, that one instance with my sister, that really helped, having her there physically to help me leave physically and just emotionally. But I guess over the last few times that I kind of left, and then I would come back and ultimately left him for good, I think I had just gained like self-confidence in that area, like that I realized that I could actually do that. And that, that I could, I guess.
In your kind of determination to become self-confident and get away from him, when you were with him, did he make you feel like that you were nothing without him, or you couldn't succeed without him?
Yes.
Can I just have a moment? Yes. I don't have any further questions of this witness.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Is it Kuykendall?
Yeah.
You referenced that, what did you call him? Benyamin?
No, I called him Z. I just call him Benyamin now.
Z, okay. And you used the word to describe him as crazy, and you talked about sort of his mental illness. Do you know about, and you referenced his mom at the hospital telling the hospital something. What did they tell him about his mental illness?
What did who tell? Or like his mom? What did his mom tell me?
Sure. What do you know about him being
Yeah.
diagnosed with a mental illness?
Well,
I wanna be
when
careful,
I first
yeah.
like got together with him, he was with another woman, Jennifer. I don't remember her last name, but they had been together. They had met at an institution, mental institution, and he was on medicine at the time for what I believe is schizoaffective bipolar disorder, is what she told me. And so they were
Yes,
together
right.
for 2 years while he was fully medicated. And then, he was like just stable, had a job, and, they were engaged to get married, like a monogamous relationship. And then he stopped taking his medicine, even though I believe it was court ordered is what she had told me. It was like court ordered for him to be medicated. And so he'd stopped taking it and just became a totally different person.
Okay. So he had been diagnosed with a mental illness.
Yes, from what she said and from what his mother has said, yes.
Okay. And you referenced the fact that there were a couple of things when you talked to Detective Cruz in December of 2020. Have you had a chance to listen to that interview?
I did.
Okay. And one of the things that you told her is one of the main reasons you left is because you wanted your child to be able to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you also told her that him trying to sort of recruit your sister as one of his second wives crossed the line, and
Yeah, that crossed the line for me.
that also sort of motivated you to leave. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And you told Detective Cruz that you had only ever met Chloe one time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And was that what you referenced earlier when you were talking about?
That Asheville trip we went on, yeah. It was like,
When was that?
I don't know. My daughter was around just over a year old when that trip happened. So that would have been 2017, like
Okay.
sometime in the summer.
All right. So the one and only time you ever met Chloe Driver was in 2017?
Yeah.
And you referenced the fact that at certain points when you left him that you wanted to commit suicide. Is that right?
Yes.
And you've never been diagnosed with any type of mental illness?
No.
Was that based on the reality that you were living in with him, that you wanted to end your life?
I just think he drives women to not even necessarily women, men too, but predominantly women. He just drives them to such a crazy point with all these crazy ideas that he puts in their head, making them question everything about reality, which isn't necessarily like a bad thing. But then it's like your reality is totally like broken apart, and then he starts connecting all these dots for you and like starts controlling the way you think, if that helps.
Okay. But that was based on your experiences were based on the real things that you experienced with him.
Yeah.
Okay. Not based on any delusions in your mind. Based on
Oh
things
yeah,
that you
no,
actually
yeah,
experienced?
exactly, yeah.
And is it fair to say, I know you said you only met Chloe one time in 2017. It's fair to say you don't know what her mental state was in December of 2020.
I really have no idea.
And you referenced sort of, I think you said you'd go back and forth, you'd leave him, you'd come back, you'd leave him, you'd come back. During that period of time, did you ever cause any harm to your child?
No.
And you indicated that back in 2020, when Detective Cruz called you, isn't it true that you told her that you didn't have any knowledge of his treatment of Chloe at all?
I didn't, only just from what I've heard from other people,
Okay.
Like Brett Tabar, I think at that point, that's the only person.
Okay, you can't tell me what anybody else said, but from your own, every witness has to testify about their own personal knowledge, what they saw with their own eyes, heard with their own ears.
Gotcha.
From your personal knowledge,
Mhm.
you told Detective Cruz that you didn't have any information about his treatment of Chloe Driver, right?
No, I've never seen or heard anything.
Okay. And you said a moment ago that she had reached out to you, but that you didn't feel like you could get through to her. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
I tried to explain like my situation, like my relationship with him and the abusiveness and psychological torment. And I just don't think, at that point she could like realize that was what was even, or maybe it wasn't happening at that point to her. I don't know. But she did reach out to me a couple of times. So maybe that's when that started for her and him between them.
Okay. But your perspective at that point was that she was still choosing to stay in that situation?
Yeah, in that, I mean, she had left. There was at least one point where she went to her parents' house and she had left, and she had called me when she was away from him, or at least I think she was. He could have been next to her, and he could have been telling her what to say, just to get things out of me. I don't really know.
And when is the last time that you talked to Z?
I think it was when, it was like over a year ago at this point. He called me because he thought I was going up to Connecticut, and so he called me and just to talk, and it quickly turned into just screaming.
Okay. So you don't maintain any kind of a relationship with him?
No.
Do you know where he lives?
I mean, I think his like physical address is like 425 Fall Mountain Road.
But he doesn't?
He doesn't actually really live there. He'll go back there sometimes.
All right. Fair to say that from your knowledge, he still has a lifestyle where he doesn't have roots?
Yeah.
Okay. You referenced that you and him lived in a tent at one point with your infant?
Yes.
Okay. I've nothing further. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
We're done. Any reason to keep the witness? Thank you. You can be excused. All right, so we are going to conclude for the day. We will ask you to return back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
So what do we think? Are we convinced yet? I'm to-ing and fro-ing, I must say. To-ing and fro-ing. The last psychologist probably explained it a little bit better with regards to her state of mind and her delusions and that leading up to the incident. So I'm sort of leaning, I don't know, like, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the definition, like the legal definition up until that last psychologist, it matched, it didn't match. But now it's sort of like a grey area for me. They may have done enough to convince the jury that she didn't know what she was doing at the time. Who knows? It's going to be a close one, I think. Very close. Very, very close. Let me see tomorrow. All right, let me just see. So they've got another Dr. Jacqueline Zam, another psychologist. And let me. Oop. And then we have, what the hell's that? She is familiar. Who the hell is she? Who's this chick? I can't remember. Was she one of the lead investigators from the start? What's her name? There can't be that many more witnesses for the defence, surely. I have no idea who she is. Oh, this is live today. So day 6. But yeah, they've been going for just over 2 hours. And so they're on their second witness. But the chick looked very familiar. I can't remember if she was at the start. Oh, I think I saw her name. There we go. Hang on. Yeah, where to go? Oh. Come on. I saw it. I hate it when my fingers don't work. There. Yeah. So she's a rebuttal witness. So she'd be the last one then, perhaps. So she was an investigator. So maybe the defense rests. The defense rests today, perhaps. Okay, cool. Okay. You mean the defense? Yeah, the defense. All right. So after tomorrow, we'll be on verdict watch, no doubt. But we have some other stuff to keep us occupied. So don't you worry about that. Let me get back here. Because not only do we have on Thursday our exclusive tie update, which you cannot miss, but we have the Leilani Simon sentencing hearing, the toddler in the trash trial. Her sentencing's on Thursday, so we can do both whilst on verdict watch. And then Monday we've got Laurie Shaver. You remember the buried in the backyard where she shot her husband and buried him in the fire pit? Her sentencing's Monday. And then we have there's 2 more. Sarah Boone's sentencing and Melody Farris sentencing the following week. Oh, and Ashley Benefield. So there's a few coming up. Right then. Well, I need to pull my finger out and do some more deep diving on Mr. Jason Fuckwick Spillers. Oops, I said that out loud. All right. So tomorrow morning for you guys, day 6. So hopefully, I think that will probably, if they're on rebuttal now, oh, hang on, they changed. Oh, they're on lunch break now. Hopefully it won't be a full day and they will give jury instructions and do verdict watch. And we can do the sentencing hearing straight after for Wednesday. And then Thursday, tie update. So put it in your calendars, peeps. Set yourself an alarm. Don't care what you have to do, write it on your forehead. 10 p.m. Wednesday, your time. Yeah, big news. Huge. We even have some video footage of Ty. and it's the first time we've actually seen him since his arrest in April. So, yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Alrighty then, my lovelies. Thank you for your lovely conversations and entertainment and company and and for listening to me babble on. It's always been a blast. All right, thank you, sweetheart. I will definitely oh, you just turn up now. Thanks, Idhef. See ya mañana. And I think there is someone. Hang on a second. Here we go. I'll give you a sneak peek, Idhef. From tomorrow. Okay. Alrighty. You've been listening. Hi and bye, Tan. Yeah. Ah, it's my bedtime. Yeah. It's a little teaser. All right, my lovelies. Mwah. Don't be good. That's boring. Just be good at it. All right. Love yous all. Speak to you soon.
Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule at the defense rests. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule and the defense rests.